Quickly put the bathrooms as far away
Okay,
as
we're
possible.
on break for 7 minutes. Rose out of executive session at 2:02.
But you are the insurance, right? Thank you.
I've got a couple.
I don't know.
Defendant discovered it's going to be wordy and limited and.
Yeah, you're right, you're an expert in this
Or
field.
want it to be general, but fair.
Maybe. Yeah,
And-
yeah. You're better at that than I am
I
sometimes.
made the keep for 30 minutes.
I believe Baltimore counts as the DMV.
Probably charge a permanent, which is
Right.
I have people calling me on a daily basis complaining about it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's a fascinating thing, and here's the interesting thing about it, so I actually had to go on the exchange in January last year. The exchange Massachusetts is unbelievable.
It's subsidized by California
I want a
taxpayers.
very broad.
Good, I'm glad, but, so I have a med that I have to take for my bronchiectasis, that, it cost me, it's called, Spiriva. It cost me $900 when I was on my high-end plan. On the exchange plan, $10. It is, so I will tell you, I have, let's get water. I have mixed feelings, I have a five, but,
Right? If you pay $50 or $100 a month for membership, you could get a health sharing like they do for ARP or whatever.
yeah.
Oh, you're not even outside yet?
No, I'm going.
Let's
go.
No, I made this fair. That's okay.
Yeah, well, that'd be good, because I actually, so here's the thing that's crazy about it. So I actually believe the CED is talking about
Are you going back into executive session?
No, we're done.
I think I need to go to the men's room too.
Good time to do it.
and convinced that the medicinal value was unbelievable.
Such a quiet, empty room. These people couldn't wait to get out, could they? God, it's weird. Yeah, there was coffee in there.
Well, that's because you're swimming. Oh, they got all like they used to have for Dallas.
Yeah,
like,
same thing. What's your,
Walk down the hall and the hall is what?
Oh, yeah. No, we spoke once or twice. We had kind of our first phone conversation was I remember very clearly, there's a little argument. I pursued the statewide argument. But now I'm more familiar. Okay, I will say, these are.
You're like, I'm not getting that.
no.
No, I bring it back from that. I was just like, I was telling Whitney, I was like, oh, and I don't see it, it comes down the ladder. I was like,
That'll be any part of being so to get there.
yeah.
Can you also direct the EPCC to develop revisions to the policy manual?
No, this is good. I thought it would be.
Excuse me.
Right. Yeah.
These are the previous year. As a year there.
Those two ones for this year. But yeah, so the.
Well, yeah, it's like regional. You want an
Yeah, it's
national,
not
non-HMO
like, it was
plan?
for first
They'll
aid,
double our
for
cost.
second aid. These are comparisons. These are
Karen, I had a lapse in judgment this morning. I should have.
What?
I had a lapse.
Oh, what's that now?
So when you guys did public comment, I might do it small. So just give you guys a little big thanks for pointing me to the membership sports meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure of that now.
Awesome.
And it's something I kind of maybe some I see that there was some disagreement with Dan's perspective of membership. But I'm actually aligned with that.
So am I.
I think more members does equal more money, at least sustainable money.
Yeah,
And
because
then we have a pool to fundraise for.
they join the family more than just like bought a movie ticket.
Yeah,
You know?
you're right. And
Yeah.
that's a good way of putting it. We've joined a family.
And yeah, I mean, and your activists are gonna come from there, so that's where a lot of your free laborers can come from too, you know?
Yeah. So, but I was gonna, and then also I was there one.
I'm sorry?
I was appointed for
I saw.
And that's why I wanted to give you a shout out because that also came to a conversation that we had.
Awesome.
Because not that I was distraught about the I didn't have a plan. It's like plan is to win, and then we're gonna
And
go.
then after that, like.
And then we're gonna go because there's all these things that gotta get fixed. How you fix it? So, and that doesn't happen. Like, okay, what's next?
Right.
So, because everything feels like a downgrade after that.
It's tough, I know, my husband lost his year race and it was rough.
That's really stuff.
You can talk to me down here.
Yeah, it's rough.
You go up, you know?
Yeah, it gets rough, I
And
get
I don't
it.
have any aspirations.
Yeah.
I never thought about doing anything this and all of a sudden I found to
Yeah.
fixing things that are not political,
Yeah.
fixing things that
Yeah.
are broken. That's what I'm doing. So, and we talked and we said, hey, you know, people that come on to the platform that have an agenda for bylaws. I didn't apply for bylaws because I said I have enough on my plate.
Yeah.
I won't do anything that I can't get my 100% effort.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. Just say thanks everybody.
Yeah, tomorrow will be another, and sometimes at the end of the day, he has it too, but it'll definitely be on the
Your
agenda.
comment too on hearing from LNC members, it does make a difference.
It makes a, in college, it makes a huge difference. There's been a few people have called and they're like, just like, and I'm like, listen, I'm thinking to myself, I ain't that big of a deal, but if that's what you want to think, you know?
Because I've been thinking about it, like, the secretary for the party now, there's been a lot of recommendations now, and it's like, hey, don't worry.
Yeah.
I just said secretary.
Okay, yeah, I saw you right there, yeah.
And, but the guy that's here now, that's probably saying, hey, don't worry, but so take your brain. I'm doing it because all the work they do.
Robert, are we set?
I inspired somebody.
That's always a nice feeling.
Yeah.
I had to get his other phone number.
I set up because he's gonna.
All right,
I was like texting him, I said, oh, it's going to be 2, no, it's going to be 2:30, and then you all.
let's get him on now.
5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
You have no control.
I have some.
Okay, I'm sure
Not
it's
as
in there.
an
Like I
insignificant
said, I have a
amount.
printed copy.
I'll make sure.
We are back at 2:12. I apologize for the delay. I did get stuck in the hallway.
Am I going to refire the live stream?
Yes, fire up the live stream. Fire up the live stream. Set phasers to stun. Warp speed.
Can we go to black?
Is that Spaceballs?
Yeah.
Spaceballs.
Okay, they called. I don't know why. What am I doing wrong? It worked earlier.
I don't know. You've got
Plug in.
that. Does it take power from the network or does it have a plug?
No, I think this is it. No, it should have. You don't see a loose plug somewhere, do you?
This is an HT plug. This Polycom. But this Polycom does not have a plug in it, so it should be.
It worked earlier. We tested it and now it's like,
Let's see if it's network.
Did you even go to the beach, Joe?
He smartly did. I was sorely tempted.
I
Paul
was
Billion
gonna,
told me he was going to go diving. I was like,
I was gonna try to talk him into wearing this and put on the lights to distract everyone.
Okay, let me check the
plug that back in, yeah. Okay. Ah! You did something.
I only spent 13 years in that industry, and I know. You check the termination to both ends of the cable. Otherwise, you spend a lot of time with the handset going.
It don't work.
Yes. All right, live stream back. Phone call being made. Next item on the agenda is special counsel's report. I believe we have Mr. Longstreth.
At 2:15.
I'll withdraw my motion since we're trying to get all the relevant, but I do have motions related to executive session after.
I will take them after. Mr. Oliver.
Yes, hello.
Hi. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
All right. Mr. Hall, I believe everyone has both your report and the addendum to your report. If you would like, you may take your time to go over whatever highlights you would like to highlight, and then we'll move into questions. And thank you again for your flexibility today.
Okay, great. Thank you. As usual, I think the report largely speaks for itself. Much of my sort of day-to-day work in the last quarter was largely transactional. As Mr. Goldstein and some others know, I spent a lot of time with some hotel convention contracts that we're still working to finalize, and matters of that nature. I also spent a considerable number of hours providing counsel to a state party affiliate responding to an FEC complaint, and I don't think we know the resolution of that yet, but hopefully they will resolve that matter without any civil or certainly criminal penalty. I think I could speak about that in more detail, perhaps offline, if folks want to know the details of that matter. Beyond the day-to-day stuff, I wanted to highlight some litigation developments, and these actually come out of the scope of my representation of the LNC, but of course they impact the LNC because state party affiliates are plaintiffs in two actions that I'm litigating right now. The first, I think, as the committee knows, is the lawsuit that we filed in Texas. I believe we filed that before the last time we met. But that case has now been briefed on the defendant's motion to dismiss, as well as a motion for preliminary injunction that we filed as plaintiffs. And in case people are unaware, Texas passed a new law in 2019 on top of already some of the worst ballot access laws in the entire country, wherein they are now requiring a ballot qualified minor party like Libertarian Party of Texas, which formerly until mid-2019 was permitted to place its candidates on the general election ballot after nominating them at a convention. In 2019, the new law stated that individual candidates would have to pay filing fees or submit their own individual nomination petitions in order to appear on the general election ballot. And we filed a motion for a preliminary injunction to enjoin the Secretary of State from enforcing those new requirements, at least for purposes of the 2020 election cycle. couple different arguments against enforcing these new requirements in 2020. The first of which is that they were formally enacted in June 2019. They took effect on September 1, 2019, and the Secretary of State construed them to require compliance by December 9th, 2019. And there are substantial requirements. The filing fee for a statewide office is $5,000. Similar to the signature requirement, if you don't want to pay the filing fee, it's 5,000 signatures. And then for lesser offices, the fees and petition requirements are lower. But that obviously raises due process concerns when the state enacts such substantial new requirements so late in an election cycle, and essentially springs it upon a party that was formerly ballot qualified and says, now you've got to do all this new stuff in order to put your candidates on the ballot. That's a pretty clear due process violation right there. So we challenged it on that ground, and then also on what I would sort of characterize as conventional constitutional grounds. The state really has no interest in charging filing fees to candidates of parties that nominate by convention. These filing fees are the same filing fees that candidates, major party candidates, have to pay in order to appear on the primary election ballot. But since the Libertarian Party of Texas doesn't participate in the primary, there's really no justification for charging them the same filing fee as a candidate who's seeking to appear on the primary election ballot. The Libertarian Party candidates don't cause the state to incur any cost, so there's no need to recover any cost from these candidates, nor do they appear on any primary election ballot, so there's no regulatory interest in limiting the number of candidates that appear on that ballot. There's really no justification for these new requirements. So we had a hearing on this motion, on actually both motions, state's motion to dismiss and our motion for preliminary injunction on October 31st. And it seemed to go very well. I think the judge was very receptive to our arguments. The state, I think, had a very difficult time justifying the new requirements, and that became, I think, very clear when at the end of the hearing, the judge, who was sick and therefore didn't ask that many questions, but one question he did ask is for the state to provide some justification for why it needed to enforce these requirements beyond the standard response they always give, which is that the state has an interest in enforcing its own laws. And the defense counsel was actually kind of stymied and didn't have anything to say about that. So that was a pretty good note for the hearing to end on. The judge said he was going to be getting us an order. We need relief, or we need an answer anyway very soon, since the deadline for complying is December 9th. And so we were hoping for a decision within about 2 weeks. You never can tell if these things will come down. And we've just passed the 2-week mark. So just kind of anxiously awaiting that order to see what will happen. But fairly optimistic about it at this point. And then, more broadly speaking, I think I've spoken about this case in our previous meeting, but Texas is a tough nut to crack because there's a Supreme Court decision from 1974 upholding the state's entire statutory scheme, and essentially every ballot access case that has been filed in Texas since then has lost. But we spent, I would say, more than a year preparing the legal strategy and the factual and evidentiary background support for this case, and we're really approaching it in what I think is a new way of approaching ballot access, which is to try to establish that no matter how many signatures the Supreme Court has upheld in terms of just the actual number of signatures required, what we're attacking is the procedure itself, the nominating petition procedure. And we're saying that the idea that candidates should still be required to collect signatures by hand on pencil and paper or pen and paper in 2020, more than 100 years after this procedure was first enacted, is itself a constitutional violation, because there are better, more efficient, less burdensome procedures more than 100 years after that procedure was first enacted. And in fact, the Texas election code has been updated substantially with respect to major party procedures. They're electronic, they're automated, everything is done to minimize the burden on those parties, and yet the state is still requiring minor parties to do the same thing it required them to do over 100 years ago. So I think it's a novel approach. It's the reason why it took a long time to prepare this case, because we had to go back through the historical record and collect the evidence demonstrating that there's really no way to comply with this obsolete, archaic procedure in the modern day when, you know, signature requirements are no longer just a few thousand, it's up to 80,000 in Texas in 2020. There's no way to collect that many signatures by hand on paper except by spending lots and lots of money. And we've got the evidence to show that. And so what we're going to try to prove is that this procedure really amounts to not strictly a poll tax, but an impermissible financial barrier to participation in elections. And that's not something the court has had to consider before, much less with a robust historical record like we've prepared. So it's going to be very interesting to litigate this case, and hopefully I'm hoping for a major breakthrough in ballot access litigation with this case. It could establish a whole new way of litigating these cases across the country. And then the other case that we've just filed is the case that the LNC is actually covering the litigation costs for, at least it's allocated $5,000 toward the costs. And that's the Libertarian Party of Maine v. Dunlap. We just filed that on November 1st. And this is the case that challenges the requirements for establishing and maintaining a new political party. As many committee members I'm sure know, the Libertarian Party of Maine was first established in 2016 by enrolling 5,000 new members. But under Maine law, in order to remain established as a political party, they had to enroll another 5,000 members within a single election cycle. So in time for the 2018 general election, they had to have at least 10,000 registered members, and they had to guarantee that all 10,000 of them or more voted in that election. That standing alone is difficult enough, given that the original enrollment drive cost about $68,000. But beyond that, first of all, Maine requires minor parties to nominate by primary election, but then it also requires minor party candidates to comply with the same signature requirements that the old established parties have to comply with. But they have to do so from their own membership base. So, in other words, to get on the ballot for statewide office, a candidate needs to get 2,000 signatures, but they need to get that only from registered members of the party. So for a party with 5,000 members, to get 2,000 signatures spread out all the way across the state of Maine is near impossible. And it's certainly unconstitutional as applied. That's a requirement equal to about 40% of the eligible voters, which is just off the charts in terms of what the Supreme Court has approved in the past. So we're challenging, of course, signature requirements as well as the 10,000 enrollment requirement. But then beyond all that, if, like the Libertarian Party of Maine, you're unable to comply with those requirements, in other words, your candidates are excluded from the ballot, you have nobody on the ballot, and yet you're still expected to guarantee that 10,000 of your members turn out to vote in an election where they have no Libertarian candidates to vote for. If you fall short of that, then the members that you enrolled, that you spent a year-long effort to enroll, $68,000, countless hours, they're all unenrolled involuntarily against the express intent of their voter registration card, and they're essentially reclassified as independent voters, which is just a severe burden not only on the voters' rights, but of course on the party as well, because the party is now relegated to unqualified for the ballot, has 0 members, and has to start the whole process all over again. So once again, I think we have a statutory scheme here that really lacks any justification in legitimate state interests. I mean, if you think about it, the state of Maine has determined that a party qualifies for the ballot as a new party if they have 5,000 members. But then the state has determined that within a single election cycle, they have to have 10,000 members, or else all their members are taken away and they have to start all over again. And yet, in the case of Libertarian Party of Maine, when they were disqualified, they had more than 6,000 members, which is more than enough to qualify as a new party. So it's, you know, it's sort of beyond a catch-22 situation. It's just it's a scenario where it's functionally impossible for a new party to get started and stay established long enough to build the kind of voter support that is needed in order to remain qualified. So we haven't progressed beyond actually filing the complaint. We're also preparing a motion for preliminary injunction in that case, which will be filed very shortly. And we're hoping to get the voters who are unenrolled as Libertarian re-enrolled in time for the 2020 elections so that the party will become qualified once again. And that will be happening. The motion for preliminary injunction will be filed this month. And then I think I'd like to turn to the addendum to the report. This is the proposal that the Libertarian National Committee join or actually file its own amicus brief in a CAFRA case. That's the Civil Asset Forfeiture Reform Act. This case, I must say at the outset, I'm not terribly familiar with this case or the legal issues giving rise to it. This request came in when I was in Texas for that case, and I haven't had a chance to look into it too much beyond what has been submitted to us through the Heritage Foundation and Petitioners Council. But I can say just as a general matter that it does look like a case that implicates Libertarian Party interests. And I believe the chairman sat in on a call with Petitioners Council, which was taking place during my Texas hearing. So I didn't participate in that, and perhaps he may want to comment on the case himself. But I believe the chair had said that he thinks that proposed topic number 1 may be of interest. I also thought that proposed topic number 6 from Petitioners Council might be something that the Libertarian Party could weigh in on, even though Petitioners Council suggests that it would be ideal for economists or academics. I think it also implicates Libertarian Party's core interests. I'm happy to discuss this case to the extent that I'm familiar with it, but I think at this point, I'll just stop and ask if there are any questions.
Are there any questions? I have Mr. Phillips. Go ahead, Mr. Phillips.
Just 2 things. One, not necessarily a question, but I'm very interested in that case on that addendum. So, you know, if you come across more knowledge and would share that with me, I'd be interested. And the second thing is that I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a case in Illinois where an independent has filed suit on the ballot access laws in Illinois. And it got shot down a couple years ago and they filed an appeal. If you're interested in that, I actually, in the course of one of my other activities, I ran into one of the attorneys on that case. So if you're interested in some information on that case, I'll pass along his information to you via email.
Are you talking about Gill v. Scholes?
I believe so.
Sam Conman and
yes. Okay, so you're already familiar with them. Okay.
Not only am I familiar, I'm handling the appeal.
Excellent. All right. He didn't mention that to me when I was talking to him just last week.
Yeah. So on that appeal, it does not directly implicate the Libertarian Party, and it's as you mentioned, filed on behalf of an independent candidate, but. That appeal has been fully briefed. It challenges the 5% signature requirement for independent candidates for United States House. I didn't litigate it in the lower court, but I did take over on appeal. And I have to say, it is based on a pretty robust evidentiary record. The plaintiff candidate is a plaintiff candidate. He collected more signatures than any United States representative candidate, except 3 in all of American history, out of, tens of thousands. Just, he's got a lot of good facts and evidence demonstrating that he made a diligent effort to comply with this very high 5% signature requirement. And he got just a terrible decision from the district court judge. The analysis in that opinion was just 4 pages long, and it really wasn't analysis. It was just almost cut and pasted from another opinion, which was inapplicable for reasons I don't need to explain. So we had a pretty good, strong record and a narrow issue on appeal, which was just, was the district court's inordinate reliance on this case that really did not dispose of his claims improper. And so we're optimistic for a good judgment on that appeal as well.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bishop Henchman.
Hi, Mr. Hall. I think you've reviewed all of our different hotel contracts. I was wondering if you had any impressions you want to give us on the relative legal risk between the 2 options we're considering.
Did you hear that, Oliver?
I did, and I think it may be a little early for me to weigh in on that, because my understanding from Mr. Goldstein is that a lot of the language in the drafts that I've seen is either already agreed that it shouldn't be there, or absolutely will be removed before we get to a final stage. I did return some comments on the drafts that I saw that perhaps, maybe you've already seen them, Mr. Bishop Henchman, or if not, maybe they could be circulated to you. The one that I saw with the DC hotel, it's funny because there's a huge variation in how well written the contracts were. And the DC one was very well written, but was written in a way that was totally one-sided and raised serious red flags for me, which I commented on in the draft. But I think there are such serious and legitimate concerns that any party on the other side negotiating in good faith would agree to address our concerns to our satisfaction. So I just think it's a little early to comment on those draft documents that I've seen, because typically I come in when the contract is final or near final and evaluate those type of concerns. And so I hope it's not an unsatisfactory answer, but I think at this point I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at, because I know that a lot of these terms are going to be removed. So I don't think it really makes sense to evaluate them substantively at this time.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Hall? Hearing no other questions from Mr. Hall, if you'll indulge me, I was on the amicus call regarding US v. Salgado. To give you guys a very quick and dirty explanation of what this case was, in Florida, there's a lot of civil asset forfeiture in which the cops pull you over and you have some cash, or they go into your house and you have some cash. It's typically a number that's under 10 grand, which is about what it costs to get an attorney to defend your cash. And they often offer you some sort of settlement where, hey, we'll just drop everything, we'll keep half your cash, you can have the other half back as long as you don't fight it. They had a client who was not the client at the trial stage, who fought it all the way. And the federal CAFRA statute says if you fight it and you substantially prevail, you get to get your attorney's fees back as a way to try and discourage cops from stealing your money, which I think is something most Americans agree we should discourage cops from doing. What they did was they agreed to give the money back. The judge entered a specific order that the case could not be refiled. They can't try and get this lady's money again, and then dismissed it without prejudice. Now, without prejudice, legally, usually means that you can refile it.
Right.
But by dismissing it without prejudice with a specific order that says you can't refile, in fact, it can't be refiled, which most human beings and of a certain, ability to breathe and comprehend words would say that that person had substantially prevailed in her case. In the next breath of the judge's order, he says, because I dismissed it without prejudice, you haven't substantially prevailed. You are not entitled to any of your attorney's fees. Take your money and get out of here. It's quite wrong. It's ridiculously wrong. It's wrong in a way that, well, here's how wrong it is. It's wrong in a way that we're at the petition for certiorari stage, and IJ, who has, I think, they're 4 and 7 in the Supreme Court. I may be off, but they tend to win. They're going to be filing the petition for certiorari. There's a couple of issues. We are not locked into one of the 6 topics that they want us to be an amicus on. We can do a little bit of adjustment for our own interests. What I wanted to bring to the board, because of the deadlines, the petition for cert is going to go in on the 19th, which is Tuesday, I believe, or Monday, or whatever day it is. I don't actually really care. But a month after that is the deadline for amicus. Amicus briefs are generally pretty short. I don't know who we would get to write it. I believe amicuses are somewhat outside the scope of Mr. Hall's retainer, at least as a general matter. But there are other attorneys who might be willing to assist. I myself might have some extra time where I can do some writing. Mr. Bishop Henchman, if he's inclined or interested. If he's not, then I won't volunteer him. Dr. Lark?
Well, yes, I don't know them well, but there actually is a law firm in the Commonwealth of Virginia that specializes in asset forfeiture cases, and they might be willing to be involved with this. I can make inquiries about it.
Okay. So the thing that I wanted to bring up for the board is our policy manual requires board approval, or at least executive committee approval for entering an amicus. So if someone wants to propose a motion that we move forward with an amicus if it's practicable, that would, Mr. Longstreth will move that. So it's a motion to file an amicus, if possible, in U.S. v. Salgado on behalf of Libertarian National Committee. Second from Mr. Phillips. Is there any desire for any discussion?
Just a brief comment. Could we coordinate the release of that amicus with our PR machine so that we can coordinate the new approach towards websites, so there's a dedicated page up ahead of it where we simultaneously file and publish that?
Yes.
Put that out to the affiliates that it's out there so that we can then share it and then essentially blow it up.
Yes. Other discussion about the motion? Dr. Lark?
Perhaps the LNC might give some thought to is there an upper bound on how much this might cost? It shouldn't cost us a lot, but how much would be an upper bound on how much we should be willing to pay for something?
So I would like to ask council what would be expected for something like this in order to determine what that limit might be.
Mr. Hall, do you have any ideas?
Was the question about the cost?
How much, what is a legit budget for us to have to file an amicus in this sort of time frame and that length?
If you're just talking about the printing costs, and I don't believe there's a filing fee, but it depends on the case, because you have to, well, it depends on the length of the brief, essentially. But I think anywhere from $1,000 at the low end to $2,000 at the high end is a reasonable budget just for the cost.
For the cost.
And then, of course, if you have to retain counsel, that's a whole separate
What's
cost.
the number of hours you think would need to go into an amicus?
I think it depends on also the attorney's level of experience and expertise with the particular issues. But I think to do a good amicus brief, you really need probably somewhere close to 40 hours.
How many hours, sorry, Mr. Hall? 40? Okay.
I think somewhere close to 40 hours is a ballpark. If you wanted to, I mean, you don't want to rush these things, right? You could probably do it for fewer hours than that, especially if you're going to keep it short and limit it to a discrete issue. But I think 40 hours is a good ballpark figure.
Okay. Mr. Longstreth, do you want to amend?
I would move to amend to cap the dollar limit at $2,500 to include the hours and potential filing fees, and that we revisit it. It looks like costs would go above that.
Okay. So there's a motion to amend to allocate 2,500 as an upper limit absent action by the executive committee.
Yes.
Second.
Mr. Hagan?
I move to amend to include in that to increase in the budget line item 75 litigation, which is his limit, increase it by the same amount, 2,500.
What line item, please?
75. Is there an objection to that amendment? Hearing no objection to that amendment will go. Is there an objection to Mr. Longstreth's amendment for the $2,500 budget? Hearing no objection to that amendment, is there any further discussion on the motion? Is there an objection to the motion? Hearing no objection, the motion passes. Are there any other questions for Mr. Hall? Dr. Lark? No? Okay. Mr. Hall, anything else for us?
No, I think that's all.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And again, apologies for the rescheduling, and we'll be in touch about how we move forward on the items that we're moving forward on.
That sounds great. Thanks very much for the opportunity. I always appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Bye.
Is it okay? So Mr. Goldstein is going to let me know that the representative for the Indianapolis bid needs to go
by 3:30, so I would move to amend the agenda to let her go on now for half an hour.
I did tell Mr. Longstreth I would recognize him for the motions that came from executive session. Will that go quickly?
I think it's best that we probably hold off just to make sure that we have time for a full presentation, so I will continue to hold back.
Okay. You're still on deck, Dr. Lark?
I would suggest that Mr. Fishman and his colleagues keep in mind, Mr. Ford's point is an excellent one, that when this amicus hits, we want to be sure that this is publicized widely, so please put this on the calendar, so to speak.
All right, then if there's no objection, we will move to the presentation from Indianapolis. We will be at ease basically until the AV is set up.
How long will that be, do you think?
I believe we did 30, did we do 30 minutes?
No, the presentation will be half an hour.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
No,
No, how long at ease?
I would say
I need
4 minutes.
4 minutes?
4 minutes. Well,
Because you're not swearing
figure
at
that
him
out.
enough.
So it is from 246 to 250.
Okay, I'm ready, it's ready. I want to leave.
Gary's still awesome though, right? Gary, Indiana, that's the one to be. You guys know this song?
I do know that song,
It's in the OneNote too. There's a tab that says executive session, because since it was motions that came out of executive session.
Rule walks, just to make sure we need to amend the agenda to consider motions that are without previous notice first. That's where it should go first, or does it go to session? Kind of.
Sound level sounds like it's good. Let's get started.
I don't think so. Let me see. Let me double check here. Yeah. No, I haven't. And I've been getting everyone else's emails. And I've been checking spam too. Make sure you're not hearing spam again. Yep, no, don't got it.
By the way, did you guys nix the region rep reports?
The region reports?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's at the end, right?
Yeah, unless we have time, we might re-add them.
Nice chair today. Good job.
Hey, y'all, I think I just learned a detail from executive session that I was saying, y'all be careful. But it's only for one day. I'm joking. Was there a certain different share?
A what?
During executive.
Was there what?
Yeah, that's all I heard. I think she wanted to know if
Actually, it's right underneath me. I just It is a very nice speaker.
You know, there are some people who object very strongly to something that you've done.
What's that?
Which is you put up Christmas decorations in advance of Thanksgiving. Which I've heard violates the map.
See, I thought Alicia was going to wear something too, so I was...
She follows the old ways. So she doesn't follow the old ways. You're all heretics. Well, no, see now, you can take, this is strategic advantage. This is like, you have seen what she did today, and now tomorrow.
Oh, well, now I might go shopping tonight.
Oh. This is where I get my reputation as a troublemaker.
Or I just put on the first setting, because as I said,
Fine, it's a joke.
no, seizure.
Oh, yes. All right. You are set up, yes? Okay. Then let me get attention. That's nice and loud. All right. We are set up for a presentation from the JW, yes?
Yes.
The JW Marriott in Indianapolis. I'm going to move to my spot I sit for presentation.
Again, everybody, this is Jennifer Moran. She's with White Lodging. They are the management and ownership company of the JW Austin and the JW Marriott in Indianapolis. Jennifer?
Yes, so thank you for having me today. I do have a short video first that I'd like to show you, just showcasing Indianapolis as a city and all that we have to offer. So we're going to go ahead and look at that quickly.
It's the same music.
Okay, so thank you again for having me today. We are thrilled to have the opportunity to host the 2022 Libertarian National Convention. I have highlighted here on this slide just some information about Indianapolis as a city and some of the awards that we have won. The JW Marriott was nominated as the #1 hotel in America's Midwest by Condé Nast Traveler. Indianapolis was the #1 convention city in the U.S., and then we have also been recognized for the past 6 years as the #1 airport in North America. 2019 has not been voted yet, so we're hoping that we still have that for 2019, but just some awards to highlight. So first I'll start off by talking about the JW Marriott and the location and where we actually sit. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Indianapolis as a city or have been there. So that's great, love to see that. One of my favorite parts about Indianapolis and selling the city is so many clients will come into the city and they'll say, you know, somebody said Indy and I don't know why Indy, you know, why am I coming to Indy, what's here in Indy? And so typically at the end of the site visit, after they've seen the city, where we sit, all that it has to offer, my favorite part is that they leave and they say, why not Indy? It's just a great place. The time of year that your convention's thinking about coming, the location that they're coming, a very family-oriented convention is what I hear. Families will come with your attendees. Plenty to do. It's a turnkey city. So you'll see where we sit here. It's the blue highlighted box. We are one of the only hotels in downtown that actually sits on the White River State Park. So our backyard here, we have access to the zoo in our backyard, a canal that actually is a perfect 5K run that has shops and a walking trail on that. It's got the NCAA Hall of Champions Museum and Idle Dork Museum. And then out our front door is going to be where you'll find 2 blocks from the Illinois Street, which we consider Restaurant Row, with tons of local restaurants, chain restaurants, all within walking distance. A concept that I wanted to talk about, we are in Indianapolis, the JW Marriott is a part of Marriott Indy Place. So it's one of the only concepts in probably North America right now at this moment. So we actually are part of 5 properties here that I sell. I've got the JW Marriott, the Indianapolis Marriott, the Courtyard, the Spring Hill, and the Fairfield. And this here kind of shows you the connection here. This is going to be your Indianapolis Marriott, your JW, and then your 3 select service properties. All 5 of these properties are going to be connected via enclosed sky bridges. We sell all of these properties, we manage all of them, it's all the same service levels. So if for some reason your group needs additional sleeping rooms, we need overflow of meeting space, we need someplace else to put something, we've got over 2,000 sleeping rooms that I'm responsible for. So it gives you that flexibility, we can grow with you. And that opportunity, which not a lot of hotels have that, and it's also at different price points. For your convention here, this is going to outline the dates that we have to offer you. We are currently at that first week of July here in Indianapolis, with you peaking on Saturday, July 2nd. We do have the presidential suites, executive suites, hospitality suites that we're offering, concierge levels, and staff rooms in your block. We are at a rate of $139 a night. Keep in mind that 4th of July there, for families and to tell your attendees, JW Marriott, where we're situated, we're actually to the west of the hotel. The ballroom that you're in has floor-to-ceiling windows in the foyer area. There's a large minor league baseball field right directly behind us. They'll be shooting fireworks off starting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the evening. So your guests, we're going to see perfect views of fireworks for the holiday. The other parts of our hotel have vantage points of the other firework displays. So your guests are going to be able to partake in all of our city's fireworks for the holiday as well. So if anybody wanted to extend, we could add on some rooms if you think that might be an option for your guests. Currently, as we speak, we are undergoing a $40 million renovation to the JW Marriott. So we opened in 2011, and we have 1,005 sleeping rooms. We are renovating all of our public space, our lobby, and then meeting space, and all of our sleeping rooms. So this is kind of gives you an idea of the color concepts that we're going with. It's all new carpet, wall vinyls. We're doing new bathrooms as far as new tile area. We will have the new brand new TVs, the smart TVs, the larger size of those as well. So your guests will come into a brand new property when they arrive at the JW. And another piece that we're adding for this as well is we're actually getting a spa. So we'll have a 12-bed spa in the hotel when you arrive in 2022. Some restaurant options inside the hotel. This is convenient for your guests. They don't need to leave the hotel if they don't want to. You do have your convention guests that like to check in and not leave the property. They feel very safe on property. So in our hotel, the JW Marriott, we have OP Italian. It is our 3-meal-a-day restaurant, so it serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We just recently have a brand new pizza oven that was flown in from Italy, so it does pizzas in there. We've got a lobby bar and lounge located in our lobby. It's got some awesome organic networking spots down there. It'll stay open typically until about 1 a.m., just depending on business flow. And then we also have High Velocity in our lobby that's open for lunch and dinner. We like to refer to that as like an upscale sports bar. So that is served everywhere from, you can get a steak, but you can also pare it down and get some chicken wings as well. Located in the courtyard, the other select service properties, we've got a TGI Fridays and a bistro area, so those are all connected to the JW as well. And then we also have a full service Starbucks located on the 2nd floor of the JW Marriott. Your meeting space. So for the 2022 Libertarian Convention, I have you located on the 3rd floor of the JW Marriott. You would be on the in our premier ballroom. This ballroom is 40,000 square feet with 21-foot ceilings. So you've got the biggest, grandest ballroom we have for you. You'll see a photo here, and then this is actually a photo of our foyer space. So it does have those floor-to-ceiling windows in the foyer area. It's great open space out there. It does give you that natural light. It rounds all the way around the corner with those windows, and that actually overlooks a baseball stadium. So it's a really dramatic look for your attendees as they're in there. And that foyer space is 24,000 square feet of meeting space for your attendees. On this 3rd floor space, you will be completely private. So you will not be sharing it with anybody else. It'll just be your group the entire time you're there. The nice thing about this is that your guests will just drop down from their guest room elevators to the 3rd floor, and then they're on their meeting space. I did map out your space here in a color-coded diagram for you, and it also breaks out your different square footages. So your green part here is going to be your general session space. That's going to be about 30,000 square feet of meeting space, again with a 21-foot ceiling height in there. That red space is going to be a meal space. You also have all that pre-function space. You also can wrap all the way around through here in pre-function spaces. Your purple is going to be your breakouts, and then your different committee meetings on this 3rd floor.
Where would the vendors go?
Vendors, I believe we had those in your pre-function space. I did do a diagram here of your general session just to get a good idea of what that would look like. This is in our 30,000 square foot space on the 3rd floor. It does give you plenty of space in the back as well. And then this was set for 1,080 in classroom style for a general session. Are you guys typically always about 1,000? Give or take?
Yeah, there's a mathematical maximum.
At 1051.
Of 1051.
Okay, so this would be ideal?
Yeah, every so often, it depends on what attendance numbers look like. We have broken out the back couple of rows into auditorium.
Oh, okay, absolutely.
For people that are not participating in business.
Yep.
Flexi vending.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we could, that shows like, you know, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens, or 4 screens in there. We could do the tresses hanging from that. I mean, so we can do a lot with the audiovisual.
Okay.
And then it gives you plenty of space in the back area to do some networking back there. I know we had talked about setting up some bars in the back of the room. Definitely. We do have additional breakouts for you on our 2nd floor of our ballroom. So you did need to carry down to the 2nd floor space. So this is right below the 3rd floor, and these are going to be your escalators, and there are sets of escalators and 4 elevator banks that will transport your guests to and from the different various breakout rooms. Guest room elevators, and this is just round the corner from the Starbucks here. So we just have an additional 9 breakouts down on this floor. We are extremely flexible, so I can just give you the amount of rooms you have available to you, and then you can map them out, place them however you'd like. We've done our best to do what we feel, but you obviously know your convention the best, so. This is a list of some concessions that we've offered. So I wanted to make sure that you saw the value of everything that we are offering for the convention. It equals almost about $300,000 in concessions. Some of the biggest ones would be a $5 rebate that we're offering back to your convention to the master account for every occupied room. And we'll take that off of your master account. We are offering all complimentary meeting room rental that would be valued at $68,000. And we're also offering all complimentary internet and all of the meeting space, which would be $80,000. So we've agreed to waive all of that to run the business.
Jennifer, and that wireless internet in the space, is that contingent on use of the in-house AV company or not?
It was, yes.
But not anymore.
No, I don't believe so. I think we've looked at that with your contract.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah, because we just got, yep.
So you're saying there, yes or no?
No, it's not anymore,
Okay.
no.
Okay. Well, now we're good.
Yeah.
Crossing that off my chart.
Just wanted to go into some of the benefits of our Indianapolis airport and getting to the airport. Our airport, again, was ranked #1 for the past 6 years running. We are one of the first airports that was built post 9/11. So the ease of getting in and out of the airport is one of the fastest to get through the security area, the way that the terminals have been built. And it is one of the largest airport-based solar farms in the country. We have 38 flights and 16 destinations that we've actually added since 2014. And then I do have a flight map here for you. Oh,
Backspace.
Oh, backspace. Okay, so flight map here shows all of the 50 nonstop destinations that we have and all of the airlines. And we actually added Spirit. So that was a new one, I think, that just came on board this year, so that's really exciting for us. So you can see that we're really heavy on the East Coast. West Coast is really starting to come on board with our airport, but as far as getting in and out of the city of Indianapolis, it is a very easy flight, a lot of direct flights here. We are actually hosting at the beginning of next year. Oh, go ahead.
Indianapolis in the state is called the Crossroads of America. A lot of people can drive there. Flight is awesome, but I'm in Region 3. Everyone in Region 3 can drive there.
Absolutely.
That's Michigan, Kentucky, Ohio, and obviously Indiana. Our Tennessee people can, East Coast people can. You got major thoroughfares coming. I thought I'd mention that.
Absolutely. Yep, but we're actually hosting a conference next year called Routes, and it's where all of the routes for airports, they put together all the routes for the United States and how those fly. So we're really excited about hosting that because they say every city that hosts it, they see an increase of at least 15 to 20% more routes being added to their airlift. So next slide brings me to my driving. So you can, more than 50% of the US population is within a day's drive. Yep, so thank you, that was a great segue. So you'll see the different hours. This is my favorite thing to show clients because so often they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe Kansas City's only 8 hours. You know, so often you don't think about how close we are to so many different destinations. You know, Pittsburgh, you're about 6 hours. So those are things that definitely pass this out to your attendees. I would put this on your website. I would send this out to them because this is a great option for them. Okay? And this is in your handout, and so is the flight map. All of this information, too, I just should touch on that, comes from our Visit Indy office. And Sam has been working with myself and Brooke, who is from our Visit Indy office. And with our city, they actually have a wealth of resources that are complimentary for you guys to use. Go ahead.
One of the things I just want to point out, in our discussion, we met last week to go over the presentation. Parking, I don't know if you saw it through the flip chart there, at the hotel is $25 a day. However, there's a huge facility just about 3 or 4 blocks south by Lucas Oil Stadium where Brooke told me that they had arranged for another conference to have cars parked there for a 3-day convention for $48 total. There were no in and out privileges. You just parked your car and left it there. You really don't need your car in Indianapolis for all the stuff that was on the show that's downtown. So that's not a bad deal for parking your car for 3 or 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer, in the markup that I sent you just the other day, I mean, I know you know, like it was Thursday or something like that, so not a lot of time. It wasn't even Thursday, but one of the things that we put in there was $15 parking, and you said pretty much everything we sent to you when you walked up.
I can't do 15.
Oh, so you can't. Okay,
yeah.
so then everything that was in that contract didn't get approved. So we're gonna have to look at it a little harder.
A little harder, yeah.
Okay.
And all the notes are on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
We're 25. Going back to the Visit Indy, so along with my hotel, you'll be assigned an event manager. So at Visit Indy, you'll also be assigned an event manager. That person will also give you resources to complimentary marketing. So they'll be able to send out tweet ups to your groups. They'd be able to send out this map for you. All of that is complimentary. They'd be able to help arrange for the parking at this gate 10 option. They'd be able to give you parking maps. All of those resources are all complimentary to groups that book with a hotel in the city of Indianapolis. So it's just a great resource that not a lot of cities offer their groups. Just a couple attractions in Indianapolis to touch on here. We do have the largest children's museum in the world, and this is all within a 10-minute drive from downtown Indianapolis, so you can get there via a bus, an Uber, a taxi, or drive over. We are the second only to Washington, D.C. for the amount of monuments that we have in our city. So there's plenty to do within walking distance with children and families in the city. White River State Park is the largest urban state park in the country. And then we are home of the Indianapolis 500, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, hopefully. If not, Google it, because it's very amazing. Just some bills. Again, we've got 300 plus downtown restaurants. So this is something that I think everybody's coming into in cities is the way that people are viewing food and restaurants, and food no longer is a chain restaurant that people are just going to. So Indianapolis has really gotten on the map here with these. We've got some James Beard winners, lots of local farm to fork tables. So a lot of the hotels in the downtown area have really increased what they're offering their clientele. Our food that we serve at our banquet facility, that has all been elevated as well. So I think you're going to be really impressed with what your guests are receiving. And then this is something where we've got some cultural districts in our, I believe there are 7 cultural districts in the Indianapolis area. And we actually have a historical trail that was built, and that connects you to all of them. So it's a walking path that's pre-lit. There's a bike share program that we've initiated, so that your guests can rent a bike and actually bike on the trail around the city of Indianapolis, and be able to visit all the different cultural trails. This is a map again, just kind of showcasing where we are. Indianapolis, centrally located. We're the yellow star. All of the purple on here is going to be attractions and shopping that your guests can walk to. All of the green lines, those are going to be your bikeways and the trails that I just talked about. So that's how close we are to all the walking distance. All the black dots are going to be my restaurants and bars that your guests will have to be in proximity to. And just to give you an idea of the distance here, so this is all 1 mile this direction and 1.8 miles this direction. So this is it's just a 1 mile radius here, all in the center of downtown Indianapolis, and your guests will be right there where you started. And that's really all I have for Indianapolis and the JW. Any questions? Okay. Oh.
She's actually on the board. So
oh, okay. Go ahead.
All right. So what I have in front of me is lots of data in a spreadsheet that we like to use to compare offers, and I have a few data points that are missing for your proposals.
Okay.
So they're quick questions. If I can just fill this in.
Yep.
On the live stream, Carol said there's no sound.
UPS or FedEx or nearby?
FedEx on site.
FedEx on site.
Mm-hmm.
Plus the LPIN has a high-speed professional color printer. They're willing to donate for the cause.
That would be very useful.
At 8 cents per copy for black and white and 30 cents in color or something like that.
Awesome. That's where all the okay, so I got square footage on meeting space, on the dining space. Do you know what the square footage is?
It's about 10,000.
About 10,000.
Mhm.
And 10,000 would accommodate about how many diners, roughly? Trivia quiz, come on.
800.
You can get back to me on that.
800, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought, I'll pick her brain while she's right
Mhm.
here. It looked like, we would likely have pretty much sole use of the space, maybe all you could do around this was maybe a tiny group and a small little room, right? Is that correct? Or is there another space that there could potentially be another?
No, because you have every space on the 3rd floor.
Okay.
Now, the 2nd floor, you would have just a couple breakouts, but that's just a matter of your guests coming and going down there.
Okay.
And you may want to flip-flop maybe some of your offices that are on the 3rd floor. Maybe you put your offices on the 2nd floor, so then you're keeping all of your breakouts on the 2nd. I mean, just kind of, you guys know what your flow is, what works best, so we can take a look at that and really dive into that.
Okay. What about transportation nearby? I mean, there's a lot walkable in downtown Indy. Are there, I don't know, trolleys, public buses, what sorts of?
Yep, so we've got public transportation, and then we actually have a new public transportation. It's called a Red Line. But that's a public transit that they've just created. It's supposed to, there should be even one that takes you even farther by 2022.
Is it readily accessible from?
Absolutely, yeah, you can walk there. And then we actually have Indigo, which is a public transportation, a bus right outside of our front door that takes you to the airport and back for $12 round trip. So that's a really nice option. We have the electronic cars, which is a car share program, so those are plugged in readily to be rented everywhere.
Okay.
And then we have the scooters, Ubers, taxis, and then we do have a bike share program, so you can rent bikes as well.
Okay. 2 more questions quickly. Did we talk about getting the group rate 3 days before and after the event? Indy, I know that.
Did you guys have any contract?
Yeah, it's based on standard hotel. Yeah, it's yours. It just needs to just make sure it's based on standard hotel availability.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And last question, I think we've only had a facility with this once, but once we had a place that had childcare facilities on site, or is there anything nearby that you're aware of?
No.
It is a rare thing, but
yeah.
We ask.
Some groups will like bring in a babysitter and then we give them a room. Yeah.
We've done some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. On to other people. Thank you, that fills in my point.
Okay.
All right, so 2 quick questions. Are you aware of the details of the other bid that you're competing against? Okay. The second question is, well, I guess I'll just tell you, the other bid is financially a lot better than your bid. What concessions can you give that you have not already told us to bring you closer to the other bid?
Oh, Dustin, go.
Dustin's on the committee next time around.
Yeah. Honestly, and I mean, I think knowing what the other bid is coming from, you know, I think it puts myself and them in a kind of difficult situation here because, you know, I talk to clients a lot and customers a lot, and you know, I always tell them it's difficult because when you want a certain type of product, you're willing to pay for it. So if I want to wear a certain type of makeup that is free of the organic and expensive, I will pay for that. If I'm willing to go to CVS and buy an over-the-counter $2 lipstick, I'm just going to do that, and there's nothing you can do to change my mind. So, I mean, and I'm just saying it, especially
Ouch.
like I can say that, like, there are certain things that I can do that I have given you. This is a really great package that we put together for you. Clients always ask, you know, why would I choose you? You're the most expensive. You're a little bit more, but we are a luxury product. We treat every customer the same, whether you're spending $139 in our hotel or you're paying $259 in our hotel. Whether you've got good, the clauses that I'm going to allow you to have, or the groups that we're going to say no, you can't have those. Everybody's going to receive the same amount of service, and We are primarily in the top 2% for all ESS scores in Marriott's worldwide, and we're pretty proud of that. That's something that we work really hard on. So I know your guests are going to feel that, but it's difficult for me. I would never be able to compete with what you have, but I don't think they could ever compete with what I'm going to have either, because it's not fair. Yeah, I mean, because they just wouldn't be able to give you what I'm going to be able to give you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't want to discredit them because we're not comparing apples to apples, if that makes sense. Okay, but I appreciate that, yep. You've had your hand up forever, and I'm so sorry.
I'm McMahon from the Libertarian Party of Indiana. Ms. Madsen, I just actually wanted to correct the statement by Mr. Goldstein. The Libertarian Party of Indiana has a large professional color copy that we own, and the service company is willing to transport it from our office to the national convention, set it up, service it, bring it back. Color copies on it for an 11 by 17 full 100% coverage is 5 cents. And black and white, the same size, are an eighth of the cent.
Oh, well, I just read the email.
So I had two things I have to bring out. The first of the two is, the water parking costs, number one. Number two, it's my understanding that there has been huge amounts of outcry about the dysfunctionalness of the red line. And can you speak to that? And number three, while I fully understand your makeup comparison, because this is a product that I use, and I get that, what we're asking is, and what I'm going to ask you is, if you can go into Sephora and buy that top brand Sephora makeup for $200, or I'm willing to give you that same top brand, or maybe a brand above for free, which choice would you make?
Parking's $25 a day is what we've discounted that to. It's typically $44 currently right now. So we've offered a flat rate of $25 for in and out privileges. Being the holiday though, you would not pay for metered parking over the weekend of 4th of July and weekend. All meters would be they would not be on the weekends. So just on that 4th of July holiday. And then there are plenty of options around the city that we could give you with different parking garages. Then we've got this gate 10 option that is located kind of down off by Lucas Oil Stadium. And what they've done in the past for my clients is they set up a block for you, you arrange that, and your guests go there, they drop their car off, and then they bus them back to my hotel. So their car sits in that parking lot, it doesn't move, and I've gotten extremely awesome rates from them, just because it's just an empty parking lot. So that does have to be arranged outside of me, but my Visit Indy counterpart will help you navigate those waters when we get to that point.
Any red line controversies?
I wouldn't even make her answer it, she doesn't know.
No, I mean, it's a new thing to the city, and, yeah, but, yeah.
Time, Mr. Chairman, 30 minutes is up.
Where'd the chair go?
Right
Congratulations, Tim.
You've been promoted.
Is there any move to extend?
Yes.
For how long?
15.
Objection.
Yeah.
5.
8 because the lady needs to leave by 3:30.
Yes.
Objection to 8 minutes.
What?
Hearing none, extend for 8 minutes.
Oh,
Thanks.
yes.
Am I called upon?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Justin, to address your concern about the overall cost, I represent Region 3, and Region 3 has overwhelmingly said they want Indianapolis because it is better cost for them. So.
Not what I'm hearing
That
today.
was before they heard the
I've heard they saw the actual numbers.
Yeah, well, I have not gotten a flood of information saying, keep on. That's what I've heard.
Seen a lot of
Overwhelmingly
votes change.
for Indianapolis. As to red line, that should never been mentioned, I wouldn't mention it. I'm not sure.
Thanks.
And I'm not sure you understand the data of it, so that, just on that. Yeah. The other thing I would like to add, and Adam can explain this a little better, LPIN, Indianapolis Libertarian Party, we have someone in our party who works with the Indiana Gaming Commission, and they've arranged for our party to have poker tournaments as a charity organization We did that already with LPIN, and it's a fundraiser, and if National comes together and meets in Indianapolis, we would arrange an event like that. It would be a shared, revenue event with National and our state, and it would be a poker tournament. And we're an FEC filer, so it would be officially done and everything. And it could be held at the hotel, we'd have off-site places where we could do it. So I thought I would add that.
Actually, Keith, questions for Jennifer before she has to leave, before we get to the.
One more, Jennifer. It just occurred to me during your presentation, the other 3 properties attached to your hotel have lower room rates naturally, right?
Typically,
so is
yeah.
it possible that we could amend the contract to include a few rooms in each of those properties at a lower rate than what you're offering us for your prime facility?
I can check. I don't know if they go be as low as 139.
Okay.
Typically, those rates are anywhere between like 159 to 169 for groups.
Okay.
I think Dr. Larkin.
Like in the Fairfield and those
a long time.
Yes, a colleague of mine handed me something I don't know this personally, but my colleague has suggested that evidently in our property, or your property, we're using it in Austin, Texas next year, that we're having difficulty getting additional rooms. We actually have evidently blown through our original estimate. We need more rooms. I'm told here that the JW Marriott in Austin is evidently not going to provide them. Are we likely to have a problem like that with your hotel if it turns out we have a big attendance and we need to negotiate with no rooms?
Yeah, it's really not likely because of the weekend that we're in, because it's 4th of July weekend. Historically, we've gone back, I've looked back the past 7 years, and there's been nothing. I know that Austin, it was a fluke that a graduation had to be shifted, so typically that should not have happened, and I'm sure that it was something that they've just never seen that happen.
Well, I guess what I'm gonna ask you is that if an event shifts to our weekend, who's gonna take precedence?
Well, we have it in your contract currently that as long as the hotel is not at 80%, we'll allow you of standard rooms to continue to add rooms.
Okay.
So we've actually already protected you in our contract. And again, with the additional 2,000 sleeping rooms, we've got some options there, which I think you won't really find that with a lot because your direct bill, that would help with your attrition. I mean, all of that is one contract under one package.
Jennifer?
Yes.
I don't think any of us have seen that other contract that you're talking about, so can you email
Yes,
that
I
to
will
me?
email it to you as soon as I get to the airport. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I think Mr. O'Donnell has him.
Yep.
I'm coming from a point of concern over liability and risk to the party in case we have a low attendance convention. Where historically our past conventions, our food and beverage minimum after all taxes and fees has always been in the mid $50,000 to high $60,000 range. Even at the Marriott in Austin this coming year is one of the highest of our most recent conventions, coming in at $87,000 after taxes and fees. But yours is almost 15% higher than that. All right, just 2 years later, it would be the highest food and beverage minimum considered, just as a risk to the party. And that's something I'm weighing against the other proposals not having any food and beverage minimum at all. So is there anything you can do to bring that at least more in line with what we've agreed upon for Austin, which is already one of the highest?
We could take a look at that. That's the first I've heard any concern with that.
Yeah, look, in that respect, look, I think the risk is low. Before we added fees in New Orleans, I'm fairly certain we were over $100,000, and the same thing for Orlando. So, of course, there is some risk there if you do have a low attendance, but I think 80's right at the edge of what where I would start getting fairly uncomfortable. I think it's still on the lower risk side.
And just to go back to his point with like valuing your business, we put a value on it, and that is what it is. So the other property, they have you in a lot of space with no guarantee. There's no commitment on your end to them. So if another piece of business does come around that's a little bit better, they could push you out because there's nothing in your contract holding you to any amount of food and beverage to them. So, I mean, you're guaranteeing me something. You've put a worth on it for me. I've put a worth on it for you. I would question somebody that's willing to give you, I can't give you my prime ballroom, my prime space, everything, and not have you promise anything in return. Because, I mean, we're gonna go into business together, and we should expect the same results. Yeah, I mean, do you see where?
Well, I understand.
So, and that's where, but if we want you to be successful, and the last thing we ever want is for somebody to go into a contract feeling uncomfortable with what they've signed, because I don't wanna make a promise to my owners that you're not gonna be able to live up to either. So if we need to visit it, let's revisit it and see what that looks like, absolutely. So,
So I understand the need to have one.
Yeah,
Normally,
absolutely.
It just catches me off guard that it's so much higher than everything.
yeah, and typically in 2 years, your food and beverage will increase because everything with the aggressively.
And that's why we have the bars to the.
Absolutely, yes.
That's our question.
Yeah, so looking at Alicia's spreadsheet, I don't see any figures about breakfast, lunch, and dinner average cost ranges. So we're kind of assuming it's similar to Austin. But
It's almost probably, yeah.
We have no idea.
I can get you those, absolutely.
From what I looked though, I think it's actually a little better than Austin.
Yeah, we should be a little bit less.
But Austin's really high.
They're all right. So
Yeah.
I think it's maybe a little more than a little bit. But honestly, a little more than it's hard to say because some of the meals you got to like do some add-ons with them, but they're not real expensive. So for like the dinners, I think you're looking like $70 range for some of the higher end ones. Somebody's looked at a ton of menus. I actually looked at it and said, oh, it's actually pretty good. So it's not as good as some of the other ones, but
it's 3:30. All right, time has expired. Thank you very much.
Thank
Are there
you.
any further questions? Not seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it so much. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Where we are in the agenda, the next item in orders of the day would be affiliate support. Oh, yes, sorry. That would be orders of the day. However, I did indicate that I would recognize Mr. Longstreth and then Ms. Van Horn before we resumed orders of the day. Mr. Longstreth, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 3 motions based on our executive session discussion that I'd like to propose. I'll do one at a time and seek to be recognized for the other 2 if I can. So on the first one, I'd like to move that the LNC directs the executive director to review our current employee benefits and explore options that would allow coverage on a broader, more national scale, and that the LNC requests a report of preliminary findings and progress on this to be reported to the EPCC by February 2020, and that the LNC encourages looking for options that include all types of coverage and opportunities, including cash and free market opportunities. And I have sent a text of this to the Secretary.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Phillips. Dr. Lart, then Mr. Hagan.
I have no problem with it being directed to the EPCC. Are we supposed to take action on that? If we are, then we can do it. If not, then it should just be directed to the LNC.
I think that's a point of information for Mr. Longstreth, so I'll allow him to respond.
My intent was that the EPCC in their report could then report back to the LNC.
That's all. Fair enough.
All right. I'm going to go to Mr. Hagan, then Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Hagan.
Actually, my question was whether we want the chair wants to investigate that, or the EPCC would want to do the preliminary investigation.
I think from my, we're getting into debate, Mr. Chair.
Well, no,
This question
what
for
he's
Dr.
asking is
Larkin and Mr.
basically,
Sarwark.
well,
if you,
The ED.
really you should ask the maker what his goal was, and then we can inquire of the executive director how he feels about, because the maker has a preference for which direction this goes. So.
So where I was coming from in proposing this motion, the reason why I said executive director is because I recognize that Mr. Fishman may not have all the answers, but under his purview and his umbrella, he can make it happen and make sure it gets completed. So it doesn't have to be him per se crunching all the numbers and doing that sort of thing. He needs to be responsible and make sure that that information is reported to the EPCC.
Okay. Mr. O'Donnell, and I think Mr. Kraus had some point of information. So Mr. O'Donnell.
From a technical standpoint, I do health insurance benefits for a living. Looking now, getting a broad, big idea of what could be better isn't going to give you the exact details because the health insurance plans contracts change on a year-to-year basis. However, you can get an idea of what would be different moving forward by the February timeframe. But most companies aren't going to accept a small group enrollment in February, you're gonna have to wait till midsummer anyways to make any changes.
Or on November to October.
For the November, October timeframe. So that's just gonna be getting an idea of where things will go. But any agent that we talk to is going to need details about number of employees, ages of employees, and current health insurance information to get an accurate quote because it is such a small group. So Mr. Fishman and Mr. Kraus would be the ideal people to be making those inquiries.
All right, Mr. Kraus, without objection, then Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, pretty much what he said. Our insurance is November 1st through November 10/31, and we normally get our agent's very good giving us a whole bunch of options, usually by the end of July or August. And we've looked at some PPO options that run about 30% more than our current insurance. So, but I've never inquired with her about extra supplementary insurance for outside our region that's not covered by the HMO. So I'm perfectly willing to do that, to probably get an answer to that type of question, in 48 hours. Tuesday or Wednesday this week, in fact, if we had a situation like that, and whether it would be allowed under our current agreement, or we would have to look at different options come next year.
Okay. Mr. Phillips has withdrawn. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this motion? Hearing no one else, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing no objection to the motion passes without objection. Mr. Longstreth?
Yeah, so the second motion rising out of executive session that I'd like to propose is that we move that the LNC directs the EPCC to review hiring practices and procedures within the policy manual and bring forward suggestions no later than the 2020 February LNC meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you need to speak to it?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to it? Is there any need for any further discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing no further discussion or objection, it passes without objection. Mr. Longstreth, go. Mr. Longstreth, go again.
And my third motion, also rising from executive session, is that I move that the LNC directs the executive director to submit measurable metric profiles and organization structure for the Libertarian Party headquarters to the EPCC by February 2020, and I would want this included in their reports to the LNC for that meeting.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Do you need to speak to that?
Again, I think it's self-explanatory.
Does anyone? I have Mr. Phillips and Ms. Billiou. Mr. Phillips?
If we're wanting them to include it in their report, which our meeting in February is very early in February, so we may want to put an earlier deadline on it. That's.
I would be amendable to January.
Well, you want the EPCC to have it in their report. I think what Mr. Phillips is pointing out is that if they don't get it in January, it's not going to be in the report. I see Dr. Lark excited about the opportunity to have much more agenda time than he used to.
That's fear.
Potato. Ms. Billiou.
That's what I was thinking.
All right, so there's two people who would like you to amend that to January.
I'm amendable and happy with January.
Is there any objection from the committee to amending the motion to say January? Does the secretary have that?
I do.
All right, hearing no objection from the committee to the amendment to the motion, the amendment will be adopted without objection. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing no further discussion, is there any objection to the motion? Hearing no objection, it passes again. Thank you, Mr. Longstreth. Ms. Van Horn, you wanted to be recognized briefly?
Yes. This is something that really pretty much goes to all of us and our volunteers across the Libertarian Party. Yeah, we function well because we have so many awesome volunteers. We have people who have time, energy, money, all kinds of skill sets and things they do. Ken Walden was in here earlier, he does countless hours for free for the party, doing all this stuff. Our COC is here. In Region 3, we have tons of volunteers. Sam and all the COCs get tons of countless hours. When I addressed a question to Dan Fishman earlier about the vaping page, I was addressed a question through someone from LPIN about it. I didn't know the full story though, because I had asked, was this your idea, blah, blah, and you said some things. What I didn't know is Evan McMahon, who was just here a second ago in this room, and I will get the actual verbiage here from, let's see, he was a driving force behind the vaping page. He did all the graphic works for it, and and it's based upon his trademark designs that he gave to the party for free. And yet none of that was mentioned. So I really would appreciate it in the future that if we utilize people's skill sets and their volunteer stuff, that they get credit for it. We will lose volunteers if they're not at least acknowledged. They don't even ask for that. They don't say, can you please mention me? But they would sure like to hear that. They would like to say, you know, this person did this person did that. You know, we're going to lose out on what we have, a great volunteer team everywhere, if we aren't acknowledging them. And I would like National to set the standard for the people that do acknowledge our volunteers. That's it. So if you see Evan McMahon today, he's here over the weekend, I don't know how much longer, you know, give him the thanks.
Yeah.
Here.
Well said. All right.
Huh? Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Van Horn. So here's kind of where we're at time-wise. What time does our event actually start?
7 p.m.
Is it on-site or off-site?
It's on-site.
On-site, okay. So that lets me know where we are hard times. There is a representative with a proposal for the Washington, D.C. bid for 2024. I would like to get to that today since we've gotten to the other two presentations. What I would propose, Mr. Smith, do you need the projector for your report?
It is a very brief overview.
Okay, so what I would propose is that we would move to the orders of the day and take the Affiliate Support Committee presentation while the DC presentation is being set up. We'll allot 30 minutes for the DC presentation for 2024. We'll do that, and then we'll come back into the normal order. I would propose that we then move into the budget discussion to make sure that at least the initial discussion gets done today, and then defer the actual Convention Oversight Committee report and discussion about choices and all that probably until tomorrow, but possibly today if there's enough time. My goal in this is to make sure we get to all the things that have to be done today, even though it's a little bit of a rejiggering. Is there any objection to that procedure? Hearing no objection to that procedure, that's how we'll move. So affiliate support, Mr. Smith, go ahead, and then the representative from DC will get set up.
So I sent the report to Karen Ann, the secretary.
And it's in OneNote.
For some reason, it didn't make it on the list, but it is on the OneNote.
Yeah.
I noticed that, thankfully. So just a brief overview. We ran the Affiliate Support Committee, LPEverywhere.org. Or is it .com? It's .org, right?
Org.
Yeah, .org campaign. It ended on the 5th, but we decided to extend it for 1 week because the 5th was Election Day, and we knew that there'd be all kinds of great pictures coming from polling stations, and so we did get several more submissions after that, but we got a lot of really great submissions. So the next step in that contest is going to be that we're going to hold a vote on those submissions, and after we whittle them down a little bit, and it'll be a membership vote. So I don't know exactly how we're going to go about that, but we talked about it with Daniel about having a login and stuff for those votes. So 1 vote per member, and then that $1,000 will be given away.
When was the deadline the second time?
The 13th.
It was 1 week after.
It's 1 week after the election, so.
Yeah, it was the 13th. I'm pretty sure it was the 13th. Is we
Mm-hmm.
sent out another email.
Remember the 13th of November.
Right. Exactly. We went from the 5th to the 13th. Absolutely.
It's catchy.
So like I said, we got a lot of really great participation with that contest. I'm extremely happy with it. I'm glad that Aaron Adams came up with the idea, fundraise, so we didn't have to take any budget from the LNC. So.
And thank you to our donors for that. Our donors, Boomer Shannon, and our anonymous donor, who knows who they are. Thank you very much. You're making that possible.
Boomer Shannon's just the man. He does everything great. All over my state at least. So.
And if I recall, the LSLA helped us with a little expenses too, so thank you for that.
The LSLA donated $200 to help be able to offset any staff time that was spent making this happen. And the treasurer at the next meeting will be authorized to make that payment, so that money will be coming in hopefully before the end of this month.
Also, Mr. Phillips, thank you for putting together the spreadsheet. We put together a really nice spreadsheet for all the submissions, so that was really nice. I know that Pat Ford's been working on putting together a complete list of Libertarian Forward media to build a coalition of Libertarian media outlets, so that we kind of have a pipeline to run candidates through, or whatever it is that we want to do to help the affiliates, whether it's just a representative for a protest or this. We have all that stuff in front of us, so we can kind of just run the gambit. So that's really great. We're still working on putting together like an institutional continuity packet for affiliate building. That's something that we'd like to have out this term, so that, you know, if someone wants to build a county affiliate or work on their state affiliate, or they need any kind of help, they have somewhere they can go to and just look it right up, and it'll be really, really easy. And then I talked to Dan Fishman about maybe getting a login for lpaction.org for the ASC, and having the ASC have more of involvement in the LP Action. I know personally I have a lot of, you know, big libertarian friends around the country that are willing to make all kinds of videos and media and stuff for us, and so if we can help train anybody around the country in, you know, finance or how to run a campaign or any of that good stuff that, you know, a lot of people don't know how to do, I think that'd be super beneficial. But now with the talk of you guys doing Moodle and stuff like that, I think we'll kind of revisit the issue after the meeting.
All right, I have Ms. Harlos and Dr. Lark.
If you start working on that, like the affiliate building manual,
sure.
I've got all kinds of historical
Oh, I'm
ones.
sure, yeah.
So
yeah.
just be sure to get with me on that, because I've got all
We
kinds
won't
of
turn down
them.
help from anybody, especially you, Karen, I promise.
Right.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Dr. Lark.
Well, actually, along the same point, when I was putting together material for campus activism for libertarians, good composers borrow, great composers steal. Don't be bashful about going to the Democrats and Republicans and other organizations and basically using their material. It's usually free of charge, so there's nothing wrong with making it available to us. Also, it gives us a better idea perhaps of what they're doing. So I think that these materials are being used by us.
Yeah, I agree fully. We're talking about doing something similar in California with registering to vote. They did that really great campaign to register people to vote. So we're going to do something similar in California, and I have no problem stealing ideas from them.
Borrowing.
Yeah, stealing.
Not stealing.
They steal my
Taxing.
money all the time.
Taxing.
So.
Taxing.
Any more questions? All right, thanks
Thank
a lot.
you, Mr.
Appreciate
Smith.
it.
All right. Does anyone need a recess before we go into the presentation, or it's about half an hour is what is allocated?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, is that okay with you?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we will be back at 3:50 p.m. 3:51 if you're being commanded.
I got it in there now, Omar. Dan sent it to me, so I've got it.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that was weird.
But I sent it to Dan, Alex, and Nick.
And they all got it but me.
I don't know, but just as a backup to see who would get it.
Yeah, that was a surprise for me as well.
My LP email is like the absolute worst.
Well, I'm sure like someone mentioned that something. You mentioned people are always approaching you about stuff, so same thing with you. You're probably getting a ton of email.
Yeah, but for some reason, I'll get it in like 2 days. Like
Yeah.
my LP email
Yeah.
is just insane.
Yeah. Might be a server thing.
Everyone else's is fine.
It's a conspiracy.
The demon. I gotta find a snack machine or something.
Yeah, I'm starving too.
Yeah.
We went cruise through lunch.
Yeah. Before that 7 o'clock, I want to do something.
I'm preaching the choir.
Right. But that's the thing. It's 3 hours till 7 o'clock. I just realized
Yeah,
that.
I'm starving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need my copy.
Hey, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. Little something since the middle of the afternoon.
Awesome. It's like you heard us talking.
I will say the last time I was in DC, I enjoyed my trip there, and I stopped at HQ too. I was like, you know what? Isn't HQ just across the bridge? And, oh,
Yeah,
I
it was
really-
good. I'm glad
I
you
was
stopped.
Really impressed.
Did we give you swag?
Huh?
Did we give you swag? Any pins?
Yeah, I
or
got a
anything?
hat. I didn't ask
The
for
way
it,
I
but
view
it
it,
was
I
pretty cool.
think hospitality industry is the only place or where it's actually okay and probably
Bribe
acceptable
people?
to bribe people, because it gives an
Yeah, for
indication
show,
of how
exactly.
you're going to treat people. And, you know, if it's ever a point to where it's something that you feel like, you know what, I'm actually really benefiting from this, then make a donation to the party for what you think it's worth.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, this was during Wes's time. Wes was there, and they gave me the nickel tour, and I was really impressed, but I also felt like looking at Mount Road is
Whitney, I really like it.
Well, I would like to, hopefully if we pay off the building, I actually would like it just to buy a second
We looked
building.
at it, but
I was with you probably a 90, I don't want to say 100%, because I'm never 100% anything.
Yep.
95% of the way through your report.
Let me send you that copy right now.
Yeah, because especially, when you talk about membership, if I felt like whispering to you, oh, why is it so important to sell off to pay off the mortgage, so that it's less money that we're liable for.
What email address should I use for you, Omar?
O4liberty@comcast.net.
Number 4?
Huh?
Number 4?
No, just
Oh, 4.
the word, yeah. O4liberty@comcast.net. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
One less thing you're spending money on, and your budget will stay the same, but you'll make more money. That's that's personally how I got out of freaking debt from student loans.
Yep.
I stopped spending money. I didn't need that $5 a day latte and all that stuff that you spend money on. Gym membership that you never go to.
Yep, I am
car payment. Don't need it. You're welcome. I'm with you on a lot of what you had to say.
No, I appreciate it.
Downstairs, is it Marriott?
Yes.
But I should have known because other ones got columns, but they look like they're too close. I mean, you can work around the sight lines, but it's generally, I don't know.
Somebody said that.
I didn't realize that's what I was referring to.
Generally, yes.
That's close. 7 hours from my house to the Nugget.
It'd be cheaper, easier for you to fly to Indy. Yeah. There's direct flights to Indy, they'll take you 3 hours.
All right, it is 3:52. We are going to come back into order. Mr. Redpath will give this 30 minutes. I'm going to move to my special seat and not steal Tim's truffles. I tried.
What's Tim got?
Really hard.
I've got extra. Oh no, mine are here.
I know, I picked them up though. I did pick them up.
No.
I gave them back to you. Nope. Oh.
These are here.
Well, maybe they are extra.
We've got a couple extra.
All right. All right, Mr. Hayes, go ahead.
All right, so everybody, if I can have your attention, this is Mr. Sean Lai, which that's like lie down on this very comfortable bed. He's been a real straight shooter, it's not the other thing. So he's with the DC Hilton. This is not for 2022 like the other two proposals, this is for 2024. The DC Hilton is one of the premier political properties in the DC area. It's got a storied history, and Sean's going to tell you about all that. Thank you.
Yeah, before I get rolling, did anyone not grab a folder or chocolate? Got one back there today? I know how these afternoon meetings can be. We sit them in all the time, so I wanted to get you something to get you a little pick-me-up, because I would be hungry by now if I were you. So, as we said, my name is Sean Lai. I'm from the Washington Hilton. I work primarily with our government business, some little pieces of other markets, but government, political parties is kind of my wheelhouse and my expertise. So I hopefully will have all the answers to your questions at the end. The thing we kind of want to stress with you guys is this is a big opportunity for us to do something we've never done. The hotel's been around since 1965. When it was designed in 1965 by Conrad Hilton, we wanted to be the presidential Hilton. And I'll hit on kind of why we call it that as we go through. But looking back through your history, I don't think you've ever been in DC before. So we see that as a big opportunity. 98.
96
sorry.
and 98.
Yeah. So not in the recent history. We've been around since 1965, and we've never held a presidential nominating convention before. Of all the other things we've done that you'll see, we think that's a cool opportunity for us to have you guys in and hopefully make this partnership work for 2024. Before I jump into the details of everything, we do have a little bit of video too. It talks about both DC and our history. I'll try to cover it more as we go because I'm going to throw a lot of information at you at the front. But again, if you have any questions, by all means, stop me at any time. So as you guys saw from the video, we do feel like we have a lot of history with this property. It's somewhere I'm very proud to work at every day. It's somewhere it's cool to tell my friends, my family, everything else that I work at the Washington Hilton. It's one of the 10 largest Hiltons in the entire portfolio of 5,500 hotels, and it is the center of DC politics, as you mentioned quite often. We host the White House Correspondents' Dinner every year since 1965, National Prayer Breakfast since '68, I believe, and First Ladies' Luncheon each and every year. On an average year, depending on the events we have in-house, we'll have the sitting president in-house about 10 times a year. We do have a presidential bunker as well, which I will detail as we go through the thing. So I can't get all of you to my hotel at this time. I would love to have each and every one of you come for a tour, but my goal today is to show you the hotel as best as I can from Miami and not from DC. I'm going to start big with DC and work my way down to the neighborhood and finally to the hotel itself and how it would apply to your 2024 convention. So starting with DC, what your attendees will love or what I think will make the difference for us as opposed to another city. Convenient access. We do have 3 airports in DC. A lot of big cities will just have 1, maybe 2, but there's very few cities with 3 major airports within close proximity. DCA or Reagan National Airport is about 20 minutes from the hotel, from door to door. It can be accessed by our metro system, about a 7-8 minute walk to the metro system, and a 12-minute ride to DCA from there. By the time you guys will be there in 2024, Dulles will actually be on our metro system as well. That metro ride's going to look about 25 to 30 minutes. We haven't had a chance to test it yet, but that's about what we're projecting. It's about 40 minutes by car, though it is DC traffic, so I can't put any exact amount on that. The third option we do have is BWI, which again, barring traffic, is about 45 to 50 minutes on an average day and average time. You can also shuttle, or there's a train that runs from Union Station to BWI as well to make it easily accessible. What does that mean for you? Price comes down with that. When you have competition, 3 airports, it drops the price because there is so many airlines coming into the area. Also, from a convenience standpoint, almost every city in the country has a direct flight into DC between one of the 3 airports. I know the Northeast is a big push for you guys as well and a big area of focus. With Amtrak and Union Station right there, we're a quick couple hours to all of your Northeast major cities, whether it's Philadelphia, New York, or Boston, right off the East Coast there as well. Obviously, DC sells itself. I'm guessing most of you have been to DC before. Has anyone not been to DC before? One in the back.
No.
Well, next time you're in the city, let me know. I'd love to have you over to the hotel for a tour. And that goes to anybody. I sit on property at the Washington Hilton, so if you ever come by and really just want to take a tour, I'd love to show you around. We sit, and I'll get into this more on the next slide, on the edge of what we consider DC's cool neighborhoods. You all know the National Mall, Penn Quarter, everything in the Museum District around there. What I tell people we're about 10 minutes from that aspect of it, but I live in DC, and this is where my friends, my family, we all go out at night, where we go to eat, where we go to drink, where we go to socialize, where we spend our time when we're not working, or in my case, when I am working too. The city itself is very cost-friendly, and you wouldn't think that from DC. It's expensive to live there in terms of rent. It's not expensive to visit because every Smithsonian is free. The National Zoo is free. All the National Mall, basically everything in there outside of the museum and, what's the other major museum? There's about 2 major museums that aren't free and they're about $20. Where most cities you'll go to, you're going to be paying $25, $30, $40 to do anything on a day-to-day basis. Your major attractions are free when you come to DC. I know another big thing for you guys is exposure. When you're in DC, you are at the center of the political climate on a day-in, day-out basis. The news media is very in tune with our ballroom. They have setups right in the back. Secret Service has vetted them and knows every little aspect to it. So from an exposure standpoint in the political climate we live in, there's no better place to be than DC. Finally, the history of the hotel and of the city itself, which you're well aware of. I will touch on as where we go through, but I mentioned a couple of the major things. The Correspondence Center, prayer breakfast, everything like that. But back in the 60s and 70s, we actually hosted a lot of concerts. We did things like The Doors and Bono and Jimi Hendrix, and everybody came through and performed there, so let's go see some of the cool pictures. Yes, sir?
Toward that, I don't mean to interrupt the presentation.
No, not at all.
But, am I correct that the closest metro station is DuPont Circle?
Yeah, let me move slides and I'll show you exactly where we're perfect lead into the neighborhood slide I'm going to here. DuPont Circle is the closest metro station. It's about 4 blocks, 7-8 minutes is what I tell people. It's what I use to get into work every single day. DuPont is located on the DC Red Line, if you're familiar with it. The metro system itself from stop to stop takes you about 10 minutes to get down to the National Mall on the Red Line. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question for metro?
Yeah, but actually it was more the walk from the, because it's not a long walk, but it's not something, it's not necessarily a short walk. It's not like you just get off and there you are.
You're right. It's not out our front door, and I don't want to disguise it as it is. It's in terms of DC, we're not New York where there's a subway station on every single metro corner, but I would say relative to most.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
8-10 minutes. What is
That's a good point.
Sean, isn't the metro being redone or a mess right now?
Yeah, DC Metro is never going to be the model for efficiency in this country.
Well, I've been more than usual. Like, isn't it being remodeled?
Yeah, and they actually have put a lot of money into it recently to do overnight track work and shut down full stations. Actually, all of the yellow line and blue line south of the airport went through shut down this summer to get it done with the goal, I think, of 2022 or 2023 of having the whole
Which is
thing.
before 2020.
Which is before 2024. Yes.
It is anticipated that the Silver Line will be completely finished and everything will be by 2024.
Target date that I last read to all the way up to Dulles is July of 2020. So Yeah, well before. 2022 definitely, 2024, we have a lot of landing, or a lot of runway to get there, is the best way to put it. As I mentioned, we sit at the confluence of really 3 or 4 major neighborhoods. If you're familiar with DC, we sit in DuPont Circle, Adams Morgan, and Colorama are our big 3 neighborhoods. DuPont is, or we say right outside the hotel, you have about 75 food and beverage options. Anything from your fast casual things like Subway, Chipotle, McDonald's, or if you want to really go out and spend money, there's 2 Michelin star restaurants just down the block as well. The options are there for whatever your attendees are want to do. We of course love to have you in the hotel, and if you're going to be there for a week, you're not going to want to spend every meal at one of our 4 options. You're going to get sick of it, I promise. Food's great, but you're not going to want to be there. And the meeting doesn't stop at 5 o'clock when your voting ends or anything else. We want you to get out. We want you to enjoy the bars. We want you to enjoy the neighborhood that goes along with it. With that said, too, the National Zoo is just under a mile from our front door. So if you do have families that attend, or you bring kids, relatives, you want to stay early or late, you have that opportunity as well. Rock Creek Park, for those who are physically fit and active, have that ability to go running every day. It's, again, 2 blocks away. So, like I said, I'm moving from big to small, so now I'm moving to the hotel itself. Hotel was built in 1965. We have 1,107 guest rooms. The breakdown is there. I won't bore you with the exact details, but we are going through a full guest room renovation. Actually started last night, or what's today, Saturday? Yeah, last night we started our guest room renovation. We're coming back online fully at the end of January, because we have a big group that comes in the first week of February that takes up all 1,100 rooms, so we better be ready. You will, with that, the lobby, all of the common spaces, the restaurants were all renovated in 2018, and the meeting space, because of the events we do, is basically on a continuous renovation. Anytime something goes out, we put up new air walls, we do new carpet, something like that. That's almost every 2 years, I would say, is something being changed in that regard. This shows our on-property food and beverage options that we have. The first one I'll point out at the top is our coffee bean and tea leaf. This is going to be your fast casual or grab and go option. You have things like pre-made wraps and sandwiches, donuts in the morning. It has all your coffee options, regular coffee, as well as more of your lattes and stuff like that as well that a Starbucks would have. That's coffee bean and tea leaf. On the bottom left is Sidecar. That's going to be our lobby bar option, located just off our check-in area. It's open from the middle of the afternoon through late night. Light bites, drinks, that kind of stuff. It's more of a quick stop through. If you want something more formal, McClellan's is not pictured. That's going to be our sports bar open for lunch and dinner options into the late night. The only one I haven't mentioned in terms of restaurants is Four Oaks, and that is breakfast, both the buffet and plated menu, as well as a full lunch menu that shuts down for dinner. Yes, sir.
I've noticed that what's not there is like a formal steakhouse style dinner service restaurant. I assume there's something very close.
We honestly don't. We have.
No, I mean like nearby.
Oh yeah, 100%. On the same block as the Washington Hilton, there's a Ruth Chris. Just in terms of name recognition, that would be your closest true formal steakhouse. But just down the block, there's a lot of local options as well that would serve the same purpose. Yes, ma'am.
How late is late?
For the bars, you're saying? We're a group hotel, and not to answer any question, but the best way to put it is our business is group business. We're not a transient hotel like you would see here in Fort Lauderdale or Miami, where it's going to be people coming to stay overnight. The reason I say that is it's going to be dictated by your group needs. If you tell us, hey, look, we're expecting our attendees to be heavy drinkers, staff your bars late, we'll stay open until 2 in the morning. We
All in favor.
So the reason the best example I have for you is this. We do an event with the Louisiana delegation every single year. It's basically all of their political parties. The congressmen and representatives, everyone said they were tired of missing Mardi Gras in New Orleans every year. So every year they rent out the hotel. It's called Mystic Crew. Take every guest room, they rent out the bar and call it Parish 40 or whatever the additional one would be in Louisiana. I think they keep it open till like 3, which is as long as DC's liquor laws allow for. But again, we can conform to your needs. Yes, sir.
Money, cost, room rates, and where you guys stand on average airfares?
I'm
sorry, I'm new here, I didn't get one. Do you have another one of these?
What is it?
Alicia's great
No.
sheet of awesome.
Oh, he's got one. He's got one now.
Okay.
All right.
You
can answer if you like.
Yeah, sure. The rate we've discussed for this group is $159 a night, and that includes a $5 rebate back to your investment or whatever you see fit. I do not know the answer to the average airfares off the top of my head, but I could get that information for you. Yes, ma'am.
What's the parking situation like? Cost, parking availability?
So I'll show you the exact location of where we have it. It's actually with 2 underground floors of a garage. I think it holds up to about 300 spots at the hotel itself. The standard pricing is $52 for self, $62 for valet. We've agreed upon a $26 or 50% off discount for your attendees while on site. So now space is the last piece I want to show you about the hotel, and probably the most important piece outside of cost is to show you all this. The hotel itself, and you guys have seen a lot of big hotels, obviously. You've seen big hotels today. You've been in a lot of big hotels in the past. We are a big hotel. We don't hide from that aspect of things. But the difference between us and most big hotels, and I worked at a gateway property before, is when you're asking to go to a meeting room, it's not, all right, walk quarter mile that way, take a right up 2 flights of steps, back down and over this way.
Please let us get off your line.
The Red Rock.
So this line going right down the center here is our elevator bank. That connects you to, there's 8 elevators, they go down to our 2 underground parking garages, all 3 levels of meeting space, and up to our 10 floors of guest rooms. My unscientific way of telling people is you could be from any meeting space to any guest room in under 2 minutes. We've tested that quite a few times to make sure. As it'll show, the main levels you're going to be on are our concourse level, which is going to be your great hall or where you do all your voting, your classroom sessions, and Columbia would be your other main room where you would have your food and beverage and maybe exhibits. We do have flexibility on where to place exhibits or food and beverage, but either way, you guys would own basically all of these 2 floors, and actually some of this floor as well.
And we can put like vendor tables, exhibits out in the hall, in the foyers and stuff?
100%.
Okay.
The one thing you won't see on here, because we don't include it on diagrams for a reason, I told you we were designed as the President's Hilton back in 1965. We do have a Secret Service bunker on our thing that we do not include for security reasons, but we can talk about. We are allowed to from their permission. So after when the hotel was designed, they built an underground bulletproof, bomb-proof shelter where all the hallways are curved, so there's no active line of sight for a shooter or anything like that. That now the presidential limo pulls up, the doors roll down, the president gets in, walks downstairs, and is in a holding room then until he comes out on stage for functions like inaugurations, inaugural balls, or just speaking conferences or anything like that.
So we're not going to have a re-election in 2024.
So that is available as needed.
So the answer to that is we don't reserve it up until, we won't contract it out ever.
Right. No.
But if it was not in use, if you did not have someone you needed it for, up and a week before, we could use that as a VIP holding room or anything like that.
Okay.
But for contractual reasons, we do not put it in contracts because you never know what'll turn up, what happens at the last minute. The Secret Service, if they contact us 24 hours and say, we've got someone coming in for something which, for all intents and purposes, you guys would have every inch of space. So it's not like, I can't imagine there'd be a presidential speaker in a small boardroom upstairs, but stranger things can happen. So.
Okay.
So I'm going to break it down a little bit for you and kind of show things where I didn't label exactly like this is breakout number 2 with 1,500 square feet, and we can go into those details if you'd like, but I just want to give you a general overview.
We're fickle. It changes a lot, so it's okay.
International Ballroom is going to be your main space. It's about 30,000 square feet, and I'll kind of go into the highlights of that on the next slide. And then you have associated breakouts with that. These are going to be our largest breakouts on this floor in green. All of them can do up to about 250 people in theater style, or can be combined to create larger spaces.
What's the square footage of the largest one, roughly?
The breakouts or international?
The breakouts.
I believe, off the top of my head, each section is about 2,600 square feet.
2,500.
Could be wrong on that. So International Ballroom would be your main general session. The thing I like about this picture is you guys use a classroom setup for your main general session. And that's how it's set up here, exactly in that sense. This was actually for a government group. You can see all the little flags on the table. I think it was a United Nations group that was in-house over those dates, so it's set up very similarly. The ballroom itself is 30,000 square feet. We can do up to about 1,800 in classroom or 4,000 in theater if you had the need for it. The stage is built in, so it does not diminish from capacity. We have a 50 by 20 or 55 by 20, I'm sorry, stage already built into the ballroom.
So it's sets back.
You got it. It's actually this area right here, and it's completely hydraulic too. So for your load in, load out of your AV company or any other special functions you may have, it does move up and down in that sense. If you've seen the video of George Bush directing the Marine Band coming up from the ground, that was on stage there. They brought him up as a surprise there. So that's what we can do with that. The ballroom itself has 30-foot ceilings, and if you look at the top there, those alcoves, it's the largest indoor LED installation in the country. Second in size in total, only to the Empire State Building, indoors and outdoors. And the same way you've seen the Empire State Building, you can turn red, white, and blue for the 4th of July, or pink for breast cancer awareness. We do the same with our ballroom.
In-house AV?
PSAV is our in-house provider, but we do allow outside as well.
Okay.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we waive the outside AV for you guys, the surcharge. It's like a $1,500 surcharge generally, but we could waive it for you.
You just did.
There you go.
Write that down. I got you on recording.
Yeah, I know I'm like being webcast, so I copied it. These are just a couple other examples of things we could do in the capacity of the ballroom itself. The one on the left is an annual cherry blossom event that we have during cherry blossoms each year, March, April, depending on bloom. This is Howard University's annual gala that they have with us. And this is actually fight night, where they set up a boxing ring in the center of the ballroom and have tables all around and do entertainers and everything else. It raises about $3 million annually for children's charities in DC. It was actually on Thursday night, and that was the last one because of the organization is developing. So
you can set that up for our presidential debate.
Yeah, we could put the boxing ring in there if you want.
We could just use it for our members in general, but we run out of time.
Yeah, it could be like a night activity if you want to do something real fun. Yes, ma'am.
What's the average cost of those decor packages? Because clearly this is
Yeah.
your standard operating cost.
You got it.
What do these packages, these additions, and these nice little frilly things, what are they going to cost us?
It really depends on who you use, and that's not my attempt to dodge. To help differentiate, everything you see here, the tables, the linens, the chairs on that bottom left, not the pink tree, are standard banquet chairs. Everything you saw in the last picture, and I can go back to it if you'd like, with the standard classroom tables and chairs are standard. Now, the floral arrangement at the front is not, but that kind of stuff, it can be any decorator you want. If you have a specific one you've worked with in the past, whether it's branding or decorating or outside companies, we have the flexibility.
You do have some decor though on hand and on staff, different linen choices.
Yeah. In terms of basic linen, we only have one set of banquet chairs. They're all uniform across the probably 8,000 banquet chairs we have on property. Linen-wise, we could do a light color, adult color. I think, and don't quote me on this, I think it's white and black and yellow maybe are the three options. Where if you look down on the bottom right especially, that is rented linen and rented chairs and rented floor.
The built-in LED lights, so that's exclusive use of PSAV, or how does that work?
So PSAV does own them in that they'll be turned on in a standard color. If you wanted to do something special, if you wanted to broadcast a logo on the ceiling or wanted to change it, they can do all kinds of effects to turn it into a starry night if you wanted to do something special down there, or have stars or projections.
The effects are going to be them.
Yes, the effects are going to be an extra cost on top of just choosing a standard color. Any questions on International Ballroom before I move forward? Yes, sir.
You know, I'm trying to think, because I was there at NACO this year, and is NACO going to be that's later February, so that's not the 3rd or 4th one after we do it, right?
Yeah, we have a line of really big annuals from February through March that we have to have a renovation done, if that's a question with that.
Yeah, and as far as capacity-wise, there's like over 2,000, close to 2,000.
It's plenty fun.
Yeah, they're.
Hotel rooms wise or for the?
No, but just for, well, actually for hotel room, but I didn't say hotel room, we had.
Yeah.
But that one room, I'm trying to think, are there two rooms, because one's super kind of trippy, looks like kind of the underground part of the old submarine around Disneyland.
Columbia, we'll show you that next.
Okay.
He's an elected official, all right? That's what I know.
Any other questions on international bond? All right. So then your second space, the second ballroom, for lack of a better term, is Columbia at our property. It as well is 30,000 square feet. And when I say this area is 30,000 square feet, everything shaded in blue here is 30,000 square feet. The benefit to Columbia is the flexibility. If just this section alone, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's about 8,000 square feet. So you can fit up to 610 in rounds in there for a dinner type of session, or you could expand it to the whole thing and put 2,000 people in there if you really wanted to. The nice thing is if you decided to put both your exhibits and your meals, plenty of room to do that. Or we have backup exhibit spaces as well that you could do it with as well. You would own those spaces either way, and it would be up to you how you would best want to utilize it accordingly. And you could change your mind too. So.
These the little green rooms at the top, what's the rough square footage on those?
So they range in size from about 650 to, if you combine these two, Fairchild East and West and Gunson East and West, I want to say they're just under 1,100. I think 1075 or 1080.
Those would be good for us, for people that want to use a salon for their office or
Yep.
campaign or something.
Yeah, if average capacities in those, you're looking about 65 in a theater. If you're looking for the bigger ones, you're getting up to about 100. All of the capacities in your site kits you will see as well are AV included. So what I tell people is that's common sense AV. If you're using a ballroom for 4,000 people, you're going to fly screens, you're going to put maybe privacy monitors down front, you're going to have speakers on the side. If you're talking a small breakout and your list capacity is 65, it's probably going to be more like a head table, maybe a single screen projection, built-in sound or something like that. So what you see on there, you do not have to take away from those numbers to get your working capacity. Yes, sir.
Are there dedicated rooms for like a media press row and or a green room?
However you want it.
Stick them wherever you want.
Sean, but up on the International Ballroom, isn't there like a little like terrace or kind of raised area where the media fits in?
I can go back to that actually. So what mentioned, see where this rail is right here? There's about probably 20 foot from the wall to that rail is raised up. So when we do White House Correspondents Center, it would be the best example, and we have 10, 15 media outlets at the back of the room. They are raised up. Yep, they're raised up 24 inches, so they don't have to build a separate riser, and they can see exactly the level of our stage. Because our stage and our raised at the back sit at the same exact height. Does that help to answer that question?
Yeah, that's actually, you have to build out a riser.
Yeah, for cameras, they would basically set up right here, and then it's a 24-inch drop to the floor, and then you can see the stages at the rig decks.
I think this is probably one of the easier, most inexpensive places for media is to come in and set up, because it's pretty much, you guys are set to do that.
Yeah, and they have a lot of history and experience doing it, so we try to make it as easy as possible.
We have 1 minute left on this.
I gotta roll now. This is Columbia Ballroom, so where we're talking about meals, again, that's some outside decor. I'll just roll through to try to get through. Perfect. And again, you've got a couple options on how to set it up. The leftmost is if you had all the walls down and wanted to use it as one large space. There are some columns in the space. The middle is kind of used as exhibits, just one way to do it, though a lot of that is outside decor. And then just another picture of the setting. The last major space I wanted to highlight for you guys was the outdoor courtyard. Being it's going to be in May in DC, it's kind of a nice time of year to do evening receptions. So in our outdoor courtyard, it follows the curvature of the building, and actually it's kind of an urban oasis. It's blocked from Connecticut Avenue, so you're not having the noise pollution that some other spaces will. You can fit up to 1,500 people in that reception space right there. Whenever we're to contract an outdoor space as well, we will have an indoor backup space just in case it rains 48 hours out. You can elect to move inside. So. That's the major things I have for you guys, but I really appreciate the time. This has kind of been cool to me to sit in the back and listen, because I've never been a part of anything like this before. So it's just cool to see the dynamic and how everything works. So again, I really appreciate the opportunity. And if there's any questions I can help to make this work for 2024, we really like
All right, are there any final questions, Ms. Villieu?
We're out of time.
We are out of time, I'm just asking.
Move to extend by 10 minutes.
Well, I wasn't gonna do that.
Okay.
I was just gonna take the one question there was.
Okay.
My bad, Mr. Chairman.
You mentioned May, and we see on our spreadsheet that it's slated for May 24th through 27th as proposed.
That's wrong.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, is that?
Should be through the 31st.
Our only, but is that our only option? Was that our only option for that?
It's been the only discussed option so far.
Okay.
So look, I'll jump in on that.
But
Their price point, they cannot hit this sort of a price at any time other than something like
That's what I wanted.
that.
Thank you.
This will be our lowest cost option.
all right.
So we'll see you at the fundraiser later.
And
When's the date supposed to be, so I can fix it?
31st.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate your guys' time. Thank you for letting me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. We are now candidate support committee. So convention oversight still has approximately 30 minutes from the original budgeted time. We have previously discussed taking that up tomorrow so that we can get to the budget today.
Nick, should Mr. Lai hang around or probably, if you come back to, I know you got other things going on in town.
Well,
tomorrow morning they'll make.
Wait a second.
Mr. Chairman, I think that we have time for both convention oversight and initial budget consideration. Personally, I'd like to go straight to the convention discussion right now. It's freshest in our minds right now. We've seen the 3 presentations today. I'd like to proceed to that and then go to the budget.
All right. Let's work backwards then. How long would you guys like to take to discuss the budget, recognizing we have 15 minutes for nominations for committees? Today. How long do you want today to talk about the budget? Also recognizing we often go into executive session right before we're done. Dr. Lark?
It's not so much of how long, but one way of doing this is that the initial discussion is to basically ask the members, are there any particular aspects of the budget where they clearly are going to want to make changes, and to get an idea of what those changes would be.
Right.
That would be one thing we could do, and we could be able to do that easily within 30 minutes.
Mr. Hagan usually takes about 30 minutes to roll through the budget and identify any points of, so we got 30 plus 15 is 45. What time realistically, I mean, I think we need to be out of here by 6:15 to have any sense of humanity.
Since
So
when
that
do we
brings
do
us,
that?
not often, so that brings us back to 5:30, which means that we have exactly an hour and 4 minutes. So if you think we can do convention and bang through some committees, we can do that. I will take that as a motion to amend the agenda in that fashion. Yeah.
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Well, no, I would say, I would like to have 30 minutes in convention oversight and then 30 minutes on budget will get us to 5:30.
Yeah, well, so basically it's a motion to amend the agenda to skip over everything that's not convention oversight or budget for the rest of the day.
Nominations. Yeah,
No, the nominations are 15, and I was working on that.
Yes, sir, that is.
Okay,
fine.
so the motion is to amend the agenda, so we'll do convention oversight, budget, and nominations in the next 3 things. In that case, I will propose that we take a 10-minute recess so that anyone who has any questions that we ran out of time on the DC presentation can ask them before we get into a discussion for convention oversight, and people can use the facilities. Is that, Mr. O'Donnell? Wait.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I believe Ms. Mattson had a policy manual proposal that should be considered before considering the budget, as it would affect how we view aspects of the budget.
Did you need that before?
Let's.
After.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was after.
So, is there objection to us taking a recess until 4:40, coming back in and doing 30 minutes of convention oversight, 30 minutes of budget, and 15 minutes of nominations? Hearing no objection, we will do that.
So we're recessed at 4:28 and we're coming back at
4:38 technically. People, it's a long hallway to the bathroom.
I was trying to snag you anyway.
There's no Starbucks.
I've never.
No Starbucks.
I mean, that's true.
It's a good one.
So I'll tell you what they have there. His office hasn't been there. So they have a store that has all sorts of stuff in it. And when you check in, they give you a vest. And they say, just fill it in.
You know, it's like, the party started in 7-1, when's the first connection?
It's pretty.
Gotcha.
Huh? Yeah. But it's like they have chocolate bars and water and stuff like that. I mean, it's not a giant bag like this. Huh? No resort fee. I mean, I'm obviously biased.
At the Nugget, $25 resort fee, you blue bottle gin.
Try hydrogen oxide, actually.
So, obviously you gotta do
Double the hydrogen. Double the hydrogen than air.
What's it like outside? Just we have these gig outside.
It's really nice. It's nice to do in here. It's cool. It's going to be about 72. Oh, gee. The light breeze. Yeah. I might lose some time.
Okay, yeah.
Did not
No,
think
I don't wanna.
I thought about bringing it, but I got to speak briefly to stuff like that. But I can do that without.
How many people are coming in the edition?
Not really. Just because we finished it. Huh? We have food for 40, but they probably do more. They'll probably feed more. And we sort of have the thing that there are 5 people who, if we would have overflow, let's say,
Oh, no, I was just hanging out.
But
What you told me about the 4 heavy hitters or 4 heavy hitters being
yeah.
I mean, I can envision us filling one of those ballrooms at Marriott with a poker tournament and play against these top guys. And the party, I guarantee the party make $10,000 off of it.
Oh, absolutely.
If we can figure out a legal way to get the money. Because I think politics is
Yeah. Well, so the way I
a
would do
state
it.
party is an FEC filer, so the state party could do the thing and then somehow flow money to the LNC.
Well, so the way I would do it is, well, you have a tournament that has a byline. Okay, the idea.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Exactly.
But it's annually allowed by NBC.
Well, that's what the, but if,
Texas it is not.
Right, so what I did.
well, that's, I think that's the policy, but if the state party does it, if the state party does it, we'd have to put it in our state account though. And I don't know if we can go from our state account.
Right, but the.
We do it on a reservation.
But does your statutory division allow gambling for political
Our county party made $5,000.
Okay, we didn't get itemized churches to do it, just kind of rolled it into what I did.
So I'm going to sell that as part of what Indianapolis. It's Joel, the Virgin Islands guys. Perkins, right? The Texas guys, right? They're the ones. There's 2 others. Maybe World Series.
I can see framing it as, these guys play the World Series poker, come to our poker tournament and that's
exactly.
We had one of our, River Bowman, who was our candidate for, governor, was on Survivor and one was Survivor. But we had him as, there's a governor's table and people got to take this and buy in like $100 extra to pay. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We kept giving him more tips. So
My favorite is that plays tic-tac-toe.
I was gonna say, is it like chicken shit bingo and
you pay $10 to pay the chicken, and the chicken gets to go first. And if you win $10,000. But the draw, you win nothing. The chicken always gets to go first. And wherever you go, it walks around until it recognizes the pattern and knows where to go.
So some of that is getting
And
rolled
it gets a
over
draw.
to this category.
But you would not believe the line of people who line up to play tic-tac-toe against the chicken.
Fundraising people are.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And Laura and Laura was that night.
Right,
Make
right.
it family. That's these are basically by she was saying that it's like bingo and bingo.
So it doesn't roll a chapter smaller. I know you've written all these up in breakouts, and it feels like I'm but for your intents and purposes,
We're going on, this is the last push. Almost
The budget, you must have time for it and say.
The budget's gonna be pretty good.
You gave me a headache looking at it.
Yeah.
Six motions.
Yep.
Six parking.
Yep.
Sue's still in money trip.
So, having heard a little bit of this, the ballot access committee was actually going to take pictures who will also be gathering signatures for ballot access. So it's
I heard that last night after us wine and take but Red Dead like that. Oh, Jim's not gonna like that, because that's the first time he's ever had money.
Thank you so much. You know what, that just.
We didn't have it already.
He's never had it. I didn't hear that.
I'm gonna count there was like $20,000 left.
Guess where I come from?
So I wanted to see how Jim scored. Jim mentioned he had never had any money.
It's always, I think you look at it as a fiduciary duty. I mean, you have to pretend as if it's your own money, and you're responsible for somebody's wealth. And that's, I think it's the attitude
So I'm
we take.
assuming
Sometimes we
from
just.
the line already,
Sometimes we take
it's like 102.
set up some money, and it's like, how could you do this?
And then encumber 85 of it.
For the project, the rest of it is his salary. Keep it in your mind. His salary is not good. His salary and our secretary salary, whatever her name is. And then a little bit of money.
It's the worst having
Tara and Karen. Wait a minute. In my family, my stepson and my son have significant others named Amanda, and my other son and my cousin, wife name was Sarah, and our daughter's name was Sarah. So we named it, I mean, one and two and Sarah.
You couldn't get anybody
During that term, we raised about $50 grand for LNC. I basically went around
So, in my posse in Massachusetts, there are 4 mics, but everybody has a name. So, like Mike 1, stands for Human Craft Party. Mike 2 is not in my posse. I got, he was more like, he was in the posse, but was just freaking me out.
That's what I did back
But the
then.
lieutenant governor candidate.
I remember I raised 20 grand.
So we changed his name to Larry. Except on the ballot, he was still
Yeah,
Mark.
Mark is probably so popular in our state party. A lot of candidates.
We also had, I mean, we had support, at the time we had,
Yeah, it is,
some sort of
a bunch of guys.
demonstration.
That's a good way to do it.
So
Larry got
something
a
kind of sexy.
tried to get the campaign and actually watch you. He said, no, that's not a problem.
No, although, like, there wasn't much enough I like about Marco Rubio, except that he got it.
He's out there asking for $5,000 donation.
And
So that's right.
yeah, he beat most of
It's been a long time since I've done that.
I have been very good two ways, makes such a difference. Although in Houston, you can't drive fast.
Except for I bought a car, a
Some
brand new
people
car
on
2 years
the
ago.
board who are just,
And Paul,
for some reason,
like,
philosophically
hates
opposed to the idea of
it's gonna be the car I have for the rest of my life.
or
The way we did it was, and I really do take care of it.
we put it out there for all to see. This is how much each board member raised. It was in our public documents, you go to a meeting, and, yeah, here's what it incentivizes you. Gosh, I'm the low person on that list, I've raised 0, and my other company, colleagues have raised on average 4,000, 5,000 so far.
Yeah.
Awesome, really
People
bad.
didn't want to think that people
And I said, that was
didn't want to do it, they're looking bad. They didn't want to look bad.
I'm so competitive that I'm just like, oh God.
So they canceled the program.
Automated driving.
And we didn't raise money after that. So,
Are you giving her the actual history? Who lives down half my
It's good, it's good.
I like the idea.
well, you know, there were some people that
It's
just,
funny because
I think it can come back, there's a way to make it go down easy, and there's a way to make it go down hard, and we just have to push it go down easy.
Well, my pickup is Silverado, it's 2007 Silverado, and so now he has it still going.
Okay, so
Because I love it, I'm taking
I don't know if this is the
after my
best
divorce,
way
that
to
was
work
like the
this,
first thing I bought myself.
but
Yeah.
I
You know, so.
Did you hear my bylaws?
I wanted to get
Colorado. I'm not on the committee, nor do I want to be, but I think that a bylaw.
I went around shopping with my wife.
Added some kind of stipend for meetings like this to get rid of the libertarian, so we got no, it's a pay to play, be on the committee.
20-year-old
Combined with an expectation to raise multiple of that stipend.
So,
Manages to
yeah, but I'm
decide something, even if it's really not all the carpet.
Yeah, the details are the details.
rolled it all
I guess
up,
the challenge
put
would
it
be,
into the truck,
how do you
drove
know
down the
how
road.
How do you enforce
No,
it?
you and I are on the same page on this, because this is a committee that has not in the past been interested in the difficult parts of discipline. They don't really enjoy it. A lot of the personalities, libertarians are on text or online, but when it comes down to behavior and having to like dress someone down, they just so it would have to be the other way. Anyway, I'm supposed to. All right, it is 4:40. We are on to privilege. Yes.
All right, Ms. Carlos
Is it real
knows
privilege?
that I often wear holiday-themed headgear to the budget meeting, but, so she decided to participate, but my position is, we're not yet in Christmas season, so.
Oh, there you go. That's fantastic.
That is one of the more bizarre ones that they tell you about.
I've
Official
never-
scorer.
I've never
Point to Madison.
seen anything like that.
There's one donut left, or there was. Maybe someone's got it already. Good job, Pat. All right. So we are now on 30 minutes for the Convention Oversight Committee. Mr. Hayes, are you?
So apparently everybody who's supposed to give me logistical assistance with this is gone.
What can I do?
So,
Mr. Fisher is helpful.
well, you can't, because
Evil Dan.
the PowerPoint, I
Good,
don't
Dan.
have access to.
Good, no PowerPoint.
Well, if there is a lull, candidate support committee, is there?
No report.
No report for that.
No report. All right, well then that's done.
Except that several of us helped, Kara make, Kara. Make,
Tara.
Kara. Make,
Kara.
Help, Kara make post-election phone
Yeah,
calls.
I'm ready, Jeff.
To candidates, and they were very well received, but we're going to continue doing that.
Okay. All right, and then.
He's ready.
Now
I'll wing it, I don't have a PowerPoint.
No, if you want to be.
No, it's okay.
If you would like to have a PowerPoint, I can do other
stand on my
things.
head and answer any questions you have relative to this committee.
Would you like me to mime along with it?
All right, 30 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
So, okay, let's see where we're at here. All right, as you can see, This is kind of, gives you a little idea where we're at package-wise from a historical standpoint. This is basically for 2020 where we're kind of at right now. We've done 37 of those welcoming committee packages. Those have been a tremendous asset for us. It's really helping to drive revenue and keep the convention costs into what we can afford. Oh, and there's Ken Moment, which I don't have the thing, so we're going with the slides. So thank you for getting here a half second late.
Look, here's Dustin.
But anyway, so we've done 174 gold packages already. Kind of comparing it to 2018, 7 months before, we're like double that. 345 total packages relative to. And like the other years, for the most part, they really don't kind of measure, other than like 2008, Betty Rose got started real early with that one, but they don't start until like 12 weeks before, so you can scroll up, let's go.
I'm making it so people can read what you're talking about, Danny.
Okay, sure. Okay, so now I have somebody to do this. So you can do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Thank
All right.
you, Ken.
That's why I came back.
Usually helpful, Danny.
I missed the beach today. I'm going tomorrow.
Beach is closed tomorrow.
So anyway, can we move up one?
Yes, sir.
So much for the PowerPoint.
They closed my page up.
No problem.
The other up.
The other up.
The other up. You actually mean
Up, down.
Continue onward.
Up, down, it's all the same thing.
Continue onward.
Okay, so, make it smaller, Ken.
I'm working on it.
All right.
Not that much.
There you go.
Rush your miracle man, you get a lousy miracle.
All right, so if you see a number at the top, $176,710, that's the stuff that's booking under the convention going to that account. Then other revenues that's been brought in, this is the stuff with like the theme contest and those add-ons, convention app, these are money people specifically gave these things. Printing, people put some money in. So, Ken, what do we have that total at? But as you can see, we're over like $215,000. Packages are constantly coming in. People are getting tables and things like that. So we're definitely over $215,000 in revenue that we brought in. Now, if Ken goes to the next screen, we have and this isn't going to fully show that, but there are a lot of liabilities that come with that. Those packages all have food that are associated with them, and those actual costs are not really known exactly yet at this point. But we've got Aaron Adams, who has been a chef and worked in the hotel industry, along with Robert, and they know how to get in there, and if there's not stuff on the menu that meets our price point, they work with the chef to hit the price point that we need to do something that suits the sort of event that we're doing for that particular time, that also hits the price point we need. So once again, there are a lot of costs that are associated with this, but revenue is strong, interest is strong. We've done running like $18,000 or more on exhibitor tables. It's just, there's a lot of interest in the convention very early. I think the lesson that everybody needs to learn from this is starting early works. That's the number one thing that has helped to make the conventions I've been involved with, and Betty Rose is the one that taught me that, but that's the way I would have rolled anyway. But the proof is in the pudding. The earlier we start, the better we do. It just gives people time to make their plans and know, hey, I need to get off and go to this event. All right, so if you see here, so this is basically, the money for the app and a few other things that have been paid already for the convention. This is the net deferred revenue. Currently, staff has got us up to $130,000, which is a lot better than it was. It's still not quite there, but basically money owed to the convention at this point is about $78,000, $79,000 in that range. So we'll get into a few other ways, but we have some suggestions of how the office and staff can kind of mitigate that amount. But
moving on.
Yeah, we'll just look at some historical data. So like I said, we're over $215,000 now in revenue. Total data from actually that was a comparison. So around this time, we're over about twice where we were, because that convention was a little later, so it's it's fairly even. But we're over twice as much revenue as we brought in for the New Orleans convention. If you look down here, if you can even see it, if it's big enough. Is it big enough? No. Close enough. Well, 2014, total revenue that they brought in 2014 was $137,000, basically $138,000. Total revenue for the convention. So we're we'll have double that well before we get into that convention, almost definitely. Next down there. 2010, that one did 172,000 in revenue, so we're already past that particular one. Red Rock is not in this one, but I can't remember what the total revenue is. I don't know if we're above that one yet, but it's getting close. Let's keep going here. Obviously, we've got the app. You know, we're hopefully going to have some people that pick up some ads. There's a splash page ad, and there's all kinds of sponsorships, and that'll take too long to get into, but there's stuff available for the app. We're going to start working on more content that's going to be in there, and everything you're going to need to know about the convention is going to be in the app.
Which is also available on the web for people who are football libertarians. You want this up here, or where you want it? Turn this a little bit. Okay. So, currently, this is the JW Austin, by the way. We get a $5 per room night pickup. Our original block we contracted was 1,595 rooms. The block we were at, I've got a little confusion. There's an addendum, and it's like 2015 room nights, but it's weird. I got something I got to fix. I know we have 1,992 rooms contracted with them. They would not give us more rooms 245 days out. Though the weirdness came in, they did something, but we have some nights showing on a day we don't need. So we got them to split. Where's that peak night? Where they got the 400, and we spread them out on some of these days in the front, towards the front of the convention, the shoulder night that way, so that we can have at least a few more. We put like 10 on those. I think we might have picked up maybe a couple of extra rooms. So yay us, we got maybe like 2,000 or so rooms on that. So that said, it's insane. We're like 90% of our expanded block. The expanded block is sold, and what's left largely are specialty suites and things like that, and those are starting to go. We had someone pick up one of the $6,000 hospitality suites. There's only one of those left now. Presidentials are left. There's a lot of the one-bedroom executives. So people that need those sorts of things, we're glad to take your money. So now that said, where are people going to stay? I mean, a lot of people are just having their conventions. So we're working on an overflow block. It's not a done deal. Yeah. So you see, I talked about the specialty rooms. This is getting into some of the issues we've had with, working with the hotel, but we can talk about that later tonight or whatever if you need to. But anyway, overflow block, about 4 blocks away. There's a hotel we're working with. We've got to go through some terms and fix some things in the contract. It looks like there's a no attrition option and an attrition option. I lean very strongly towards the no attrition option. We may do a VIP event there, the Torch Club. Likely will be like a dinner there, maybe on the Wednesday night. That's something Robert and I started talking about. He's in control of the Torch Club. The convention basically just provides him the space. So that's being worked on. We're probably going to start working maybe a waiting list, so when somebody cancels something, we can kind of have some people step in and pick up some of those rooms. We had some problems because in the contract we had missed that they had slipped in there, like we had some rooms that were available at 6 a.m. and then later in the middle of that particular little grid, they had like the exhibitor tables where we could set them up at 3 p.m. And this is on May 21st, which is the day that we're planning to have registration, have breakouts and all kinds of things. So we had to release our 3rd floor space that we had so that we could get the space to do what we needed to do on the 4th floor. And that's when we were finally able to start saying, hey, okay, we know what we have. We can start actually leasing some of this space. I believe the Pragmatist Caucus has got a contract signed. We just need to get it paid for, and then that's theirs. Scroll up this little map. So these are going to be where we're doing the 3rd floor, where we're doing the particular breakouts. These spaces are going to be for lease. They've got prices stuck on them. These are spaces for lease on the 4th floor. Let's get to that. We're going to probably be doing Mr. Mulman's debates of doom, the everybody debates in there, and then we'll have our opening night reception in that room on the 21st. We're going to be doing for that day. We're going to be doing the breakouts. This is the room that I think a certain caucus is interested in. Yes, ma'am.
What's debates of doom? I mean,
The chair debate.
So
Presidential debate.
Come on.
In 2008 and in 2016, I missed the 12th convention, that's why I wasn't then. I ran debates on day 0 for all the candidates, because not all of our candidates actually make it on stage. So, long story short is, we do tiered debates where everybody gets to be heard at least one time and considered by those who are interested as delegates or viewers. One time, get heard. I think it's good for party unity. I think it gives a good shot to everybody.
My question was just what's debates do? Is it?
It's
presidential
debates.
It's me just running my mouth.
Is it the internal debates?
It's presidential debates that's unofficial, not televised. It's just for.
It's all of the candidates are in it. It's multiple rounds. The debate coach will be doing that, and then but we'll have another official debates with maximum 5 candidates that are determined by people doing the tokens. But this is like a thing that's going to be like the registration day, and it's going to be going all day, and he's going to hate himself. But okay. Tables. We got lots of tables showing the map. This is what's available. We'll probably stick a couple of bars in there. I was like, how can I forget the bars? I was like, what's wrong with me? These are the ones that are all there. We originally had this space. We expanded it over here. When you head down this road, that's going to be Meteor Row. We've got some people picking that stuff up. I had some conversations with Matt Welch from Reason. I'm tired. This is that open room, if you remember from the 4th floor, everybody that was there. Those guys are going to be using that. It's going to be the Reason room, if I'm not mistaken. So reached out to Matt Kibbe with Free the People, about a media table. So we're going to have more people like that coming on. We'll work with staff and we'll fill those up. And that we'll have overflow tables onto the 3rd floor, possibly, if all this stuff fills up, and that's more for later. But sorry, those are sponsorships. Gala table. If you want your own private table, no tickets come with it, but first come, first serve. Up in the front. One option that's available there, though, say you didn't get, you got a lower package. You want to buy tickets for your friends. This is the lowest rate we allowed for actual or additional gala tickets. So you can get it like up to 8, and have your friends, invite people, invite those CEOs and come in and press them. Bag drop-ins, those are the ads we're talking about. Welcoming committee, that's been killing it. I mean, if somebody wants to sponsor anything, well, y'all know me, and Robert, we will take your money and work it out probably, so we'll figure something out. But that's something else. So these are the sorts of sponsorships that are currently available. All right. So, we made this a death already.
The only thing to note is that we actually did a lot. I mean, Daniel was all over the place. There was a lot of. We went through a lot of bids, multiple rounds, brought things back from the dead, killed them again. There was a lot involved.
Looked at convention centers and all kinds of stuff like that.
And yeah, that's just some of them.
2024, we just covered that with Sean.
Good.
He's still hanging out in the back of the room.
Hi, Sean.
Convention website. Ken Mullen, why don't you talk
All
about
right.
that? 'Cause that's why you're around.
Very long story short, obviously one of my passions is the state CRM site, but also a big piece of that is the institutional knowledge. And as part of this committee, when we were talking about, hey, we want to go sell packages, it was like, well, who's bought a package before? Well, I guess we'll have to go ask Robert because that's buried in Razor's Edge somewhere. Who's been a delegate before? Nobody knows, nobody knows. Oh, it turns out that maybe Emily Savette has it. Well, Emily's not even on a committee right now. The data's all disparate and all over the place. What we'd like to do is centralize that data, have it in the CRM, so that the next convention committee, when they go out to sell packages, yeah, there's a typo, leave me alone, it was 2 in the morning, man. The point is, actually, yeah, anyway.
You were channeling an indie contract.
Yeah, don't even get me started. Right. The point is that we can do a better job of marketing conventions to our own people when we know who those people were. When they came the last time, they're more likely to come again. And we should do that. So the goal is to retain the information. The other benefit is, and we've talked to Andy Burns about this, we believe we'll be able to actually process delegate credentialing and check-in through the CRM. Be able to print badges out of the CRM. Be able to centralize all that so that we know who's a delegate, it's printed on their badge instead of having some pin pinned on them with a safety pin on their badge, so that we have nice looking badges, and it should speed things up, assuming it works.
The credentials is still, autonomous, but they're over here and they click a toggle, but now the office has that information, so when that gets put on the badge when it's printed, and it makes things look cleaner and better.
Right.
So, but let's roll along here.
Yeah, and so that's the goal is.
Bill, how much time?
You have 12 minutes.
5:13 p.m.
All right, so we're gonna, okay, hang on, here, this is important. This is the part right here. As noted earlier, we have I can't speak. The office has been borrowing some money from the convention funds. Daniel asked me, well, how much would it cost to develop a system that would do this? And I said, at the minimum, reasonable, real developers would be about $30,000. I mean, that's just real, to build this from scratch. So we haven't talked about it as a committee, we haven't voted on it.
Well, we've talked about it, but it's not formal yet.
We haven't voted on it. So I think there's general consensus amongst the committee that we would credit back whatever the real value is back to the office, which would also help relieve the pressure. Whitney's looking at me. Agree, disagree on this? Okay. The idea behind it is we would be able to credit the office some amount of money that they would not have to pay all of it back to the convention committee. Now Alicia's going to be looking at me funny. I see you over there.
We will have a discussion. This is not.
I mean, it's not decided yet. It's not. This is something the COC has to decide, but it's another potential benefit of doing this.
It will save. It will save a lot of staff time.
That's a big thing. So
sorting the badges like we did, as opposed to being a print on demand, is a staff like manpower nightmare.
And the only reason we're not a little further along on this is that there were two other things on the state CRM side that took priority: the call next stuff that's been going forever, and then the membership dashboard, which you guys were. I know the membership committee's been looking at, and that's, some of you saw earlier. Those took priority, so this kind of sat on the bench for a bit. Those two other projects are wrapping up, and so we're going to really start talking with Andy and trying to focus on what will this really look like and will it work. Okay. So that's what that is.
Okay, not trying to dodge anything. We're well aware of the whole keynote thing. Larry's been named the keynote. If members need to talk about that, we can come back to that later. I'll be available. So then also, there's the POTUS 2020 nomination. Bishop, come here. He is the first nominee for POTUS. What is that? We don't know. Some other potential candidates sniffing in the sniffing phase: Mabel Schultz, Nabil Shipley, Blue Kokesh, and Duke Armstrong are a few. So we'll see. And you know me, it might end up being a fundraiser. But anyway, so that's basically the feedback questions. And then also voting.
Yeah, Balu Kokesh.
Balu, whatever.
They already got copies.
Yeah, so that's
Is that the end of the prepared remarks?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
All right, Dr. Lark.
Mr. Hayes, thanks to you and your team. Purely a parochial matter. Of course, the last few conventions we've had the awards presented on the main floor. What do you anticipate for awards this time?
So, one of the things we could do with the split up, I mean, we do that at one of the receptions, or stick it as one of the floating events, so it's not a fixed time, but it's tied to the counting of such and such ballots or whatever. Because some of us have a big concern that the presidential and vice presidential nominations have been moved to the end, but we get to everything. Right. So
last convention we didn't get to everything.
I have Mr. Redpath next. Is anyone else seeking to be recognized? Dr. Lark, did you?
Well, I'll just make the point that in the past, the 2008 and 2010 conventions, the awards were actually given during luncheons. But if these are important awards, one can make an argument that they really ought to be presented to the entire convention.
Right.
Or it could be done like during one of the debates or something, like an intro or something.
I don't know that
Mr. Redpath.
I don't know this is in your bailiwick, but I think I brought this up in Austin. Has anybody yet contacted C-SPAN regarding coverage of this convention? And have we discovered whether there's a potential problem with the nomination for the presidential ticket being at the end of the agenda of our convention, and not being at a set time, at least entering the convention? I mean, has somebody spoken to C-SPAN about this?
I do not believe that has occurred yet.
Who's going to do that? I mean, respectfully suggest that's a big thing. I mean, having that on C-SPAN is huge, and we've got a situation now where we may have a situation where C-SPAN, we at least should be able to tell the delegates, look, if you want this to be on C-SPAN, somebody's going to need to move to suspend the rules or to change the agenda for this convention, because it would be a crying shame, to put it mildly, if our presidential and vice presidential, at least presidential nomination is not on C-SPAN.
Yeah, I feel.
I would respectfully request somebody investigate.
I feel comfortable doing that.
Stop with the crosstalk. One person at a time. Are you done with your question, Mr. Redpath?
Certainly am.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hayes, would you like to respond?
Sure. I feel comfortable doing that. I think that's probably, I'm the best person to do that, because getting in that discussion with them, there's so many events and all that stuff going on everywhere. You know, getting the feel from them of, you know, what the options are, what they prefer. I think that I'd probably be the best person to initiate that conversation.
Mr. Bishop Henchman. Okay, I thought you had something on that. Does anyone else want to be recognized? Did I swing the gavel too hard?
Uh-huh.
You didn't break it.
I didn't break it, Dr. Lark?
No, I
Robert's
agree,
rules was
I agree with Mr.
padding.
Redpath's point, and I think that this should be done sooner rather than.
I
realize C-SPAN may not be able, this far out, they may not be in a position to actually give, but I think they should at least be apprised of this, and we should sound them out to see if are there any potential problems, because if there is going to be a need for us to move this, we ought to be informing our members sooner rather than later.
Ms. Mattson.
Historically, C-SPAN will not confirm until the last minute that they're definitely coming anyway.
Yes.
So my sense is they'll come whenever it is, and they always stay very flexible on their schedule, which is why they won't tell us for sure if they're coming until the last minute. So they don't hard schedule things way in advance. We should let them know what our schedule is, but they're not going to confirm for us. But I think they'll be there whenever it is.
I have to ask, does anyone think C-SPAN is not going to cover the announcement of our presidential nominee? I mean, really, do you think that that's true?
They've always
They have never not. And we have been smaller in the past. I mean, I understand this concern. But I think the concerns about when the fundraising banquet are much more salient than the concerns about whether or not a public affairs cable station is going to cover a nomination. I think they have producers that will be flexible. I could be wrong, and Mr. Hayes has volunteered to contact them, and so we'll see where that goes. Other questions? Other people seeking to be recognized? Mr. Redpath?
Where do we stand on the Keenan situation?
Mr. Hayes is the current keynote.
Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I think there should be. I think there needs to be.
Is there objection to hear? Is there objection to hearing from Mr. Ford?
Sorry.
It's only because you're not at the table. Without objection, Mr. Ford, go ahead.
I don't even know if this is the appropriate time. I know that in my brief tenure as part of this committee as an alternate, I have been reached out by more people exponentially than any of the other issues on the agenda, and I'm talking about people just within my region. For a lot of the folks who are members, perhaps sometimes they're just social commentators, keyboard warriors, but for a lot of folks who are members or considering membership, through one or two of the caucuses, Mr. Maj was, if you will, was a significant addition to the convention. He represented an aspirational figure for some people. He represented a broadening and potential widening of the audience for the libertarian movement for other people. None of these concerns, I think, are to be taken lightly. So I guess I would just like to briefly understand the timeline in which are these series of events that led to what many consider, perhaps shouldn't consider, but many consider to be somewhat of an abrupt public announcement of his removal, if you will, from the keynote position.
were you not, let me not be flippant.
It's
It was
not.
anything but abrupt.
That's why we wanted to just have a conversation about it.
So, it was not abrupt. I mean, this was a long time coming. If you really want to get into things and just, and we don't have the time for that. There's bids to vote on, so I'd be more than willing if you guys wanted to do this, or it's up to y'all. But, you know, there's a point to where, let's just say, I had Maj's back.
Wait. Do you have a point of order? But point of personal privilege.
Maybe order, I don't know. Do we need to go into executive session?
Well, so if there are people who feel that this discussion ought to be an executive session, I would consider it privilege to raise the point of order that this should be discussed in an executive session, and that needs to be proposed. And the reason needs to be given, and it has to fit into the list. So, the list of reasons why we can.
No, it doesn't have to, it's just the voting standard changes. We can actually go into.
For no reason? I thought.
No, we have to state a reason, it's just that the voting.
The threshold, yes.
Threshold is different if it's not on the list.
Okay, so if that is the motion, I would recommend somebody make that motion. We'll be slightly at ease for a moment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make the motion, move into executive session.
You might want to just pause for just a second.
I am, I'm just trying to keep some discussion going so we don't have dead air time.
Okay, I understand that. Mr. Longstreth will be making the motion to go into executive session. Can you briefly state why you think that would be appropriate?
I believe that the topic of our convention speaker has become a sensitive topic and one that could open us up to legal sorts of issues depending on what sort of discussion comes from that and the situation surrounding it.
So I've heard a motion to go into executive session to discuss the choice of keynote speaker. The request is based on it being a legal and strategic matter. Is there objection?
Objection.
Objection, Mr. Bishop Henchman, go ahead. Please speak to it.
I don't think that that's a legitimate reason. I think if there is any discussion that needs to be had on it, there's nothing that's sensitive except as to egos.
Okay.
So it should be done transparently in front of our members.
All right, so there's an objection. So if there's not objection to hearing from Mr. Starr from the gallery, he's seeking to be recognized. And since it is kind of a dead air time, I think there won't be objection. Go ahead, Mr. Starr.
Considering how much time this could possibly take up, couldn't you just accomplish the same outcome by just taking this offline and just having conversations one-on-one with the Convention Oversight Committee? And if that assures you enough, that'd be great. And if you feel like you have to bring it back after that conversation and discuss as a body, then maybe then.
Mr. Chairman, may I for a second?
Mr. Hayes, go ahead.
So, just remember, we do still have Mr. Lai in the background, and there's the question of the site selections for both of those events. Like I said, I'm more than happy to talk to people one-on-one. I'm more than happy to talk in front of this committee. I just want to point that out, that there is that particular item that we were intending to get into.
I appreciate that. I would remind everybody that the body controls the time, and it's the body's concerns that are most imperative, as much as we do care about our guests and the gallery.
1 minute left on this topic.
Understood.
Mr. Chair, I know I've given my motion to the body, but I'd like to withdraw my motion and we can possibly take this up tomorrow.
It hasn't been seconded, has it?
I didn't get it the second. We got the objection before the second. If there's no objection from the body, we'll withdraw the motion for moving into executive session at this time. We are within a minute of the end of our time. Is there a motion to extend, and for how long?
15 minutes.
There's a motion to extend for 15 minutes.
Oh, only for the purpose of site selection.
All right.
Oh, okay.
There's a motion to extend for 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing site selection. Is there objection to that? Hearing no objection, will be extended for 15 minutes. In the past, I believe the last time we did this, we moved one of the sites and then did it as an amendment? Or did we do it as a blank?
No, it was, little cards, I believe.
No, that's the balloting, but
Oh.
procedurally,
There's often just a motion to choose a site, if somebody wants a different one. then you
that's,
just go-
Right.
okay. Mr. Goldstein?
Let's get the easy one out of the way first. I move to set the site selection for the 2024 convention as the Washington DC Hilton, assuming we could come up with an acceptable contract.
Okay, so I want to understand the motion before I explain it to the rest of the body. You are moving that we would select Washington DC and the Hilton as a property contingent on an acceptable contract being negotiated between the committee and the site.
Correct.
Passage of this motion would set the 2024 convention both city and venue, subject to rescindment if we can't come to terms. A failure of the motion would set the convention oversight committee back to explore other options for 2024. And I would, as I understand it, that would not eliminate Washington DC from continuing to bid for 2024, but it would mean that they would then be back in the hopper with other 2024 options. Is that well, I'm just asking to make sure I understand the motion.
That's my intent.
Okay, that is the intent. Is there any problem anyone sees parliamentarily with that? I don't see a problem. Mr. Hayes, did you have a question?
I had information.
I have a question.
Well, Mr. Hayes, what information do you have?
Just basically the option, the ramifications of doing it, not doing it, and
well, that's properly discussion once we move in. Mr. Redpath?
Well, we only heard from Washington DC. Are there any other, no other possibilities for 2024 have been presented?
At this time, that's correct. So this is, the question before the body in simple terms is the 2024 proposal from the Washington Hilton good enough that you guys are like, damn, let's just do it, or not? Is that clear? All right.
Can I speak to my motion?
Mr. Goldstein can speak to his motion, and then I have you on deck to be recognized.
I just want to clarify that for Mr. Redpath, is that there's no harm, no foul. If we do it, fine, we're set, and the convention committee in the future could move on to future dates and get things done a lot quicker than we have in the past. If this gets turned down, then,
Thank you.
the convention committee next year can start a search for 2024.
All right. Mr. Hayes, then Mr. Nana.
Yeah, essentially.
And then Mr. Starr, Mr. Nana, Mr. Starr without objection.
I'm going to somewhat echo what Sam said. So where we're at right now, this is just basically DC Hilton or NODA. And the question that you need to ask yourself, this is a situation.
It's not NODA, because it doesn't eliminate DC Hilton from competing.
From the technical standpoint.
Right.
It's an up or down vote, yes or no. So, we do have time to go back to the table, but should we go back to the table? The chances of the DC Hilton getting a program as large as ours in over those dates are not that great. However, there is a chance that they can get a program not the same size in, and then that same space is not available, the same deal's not available. I know they have agreed that they would put, if we got signed by Thanksgiving, which we're shooting to have a contract ready today, and that's more of me. They had something for us to start going over things.
Don't take a lot of time, Daniel.
And anyway, so Wi-Fi in the meeting space, and they'll add that an additional presidential suite at our group rate. And that's really like the main last concessions that we have to have this really great bid. It's a good bid otherwise. And think of the media option, how much access there is.
All right. All of the people in my queue are without objection except for Mr. Hewitt. So I have Mr. Nana, Mr. Starr, Mr. Kraus, and then Mr. Hewitt. Unless there's objection, in which case we'll go to Mr. Hewitt first. Hearing no objection, Mr. Nana.
I see the reasoning behind this, but it's a bit scary to me. We don't know what the LNC is going to look like in 2020, and in my opinion, this is how you're going to end up with us just selecting DC and never changing it. And instead of actually doing our due diligence and making sure there's not a better place to go. I'm scared that if we say yes to this now, that we'll never ever revisit it.
Okay, Mr. Starr.
Well, at least from what I can see from the comparison chart that Alicia Matson put together, this is by far the most expensive proposal we've ever done, at least going back in history. And it just seems to me that if you want to negotiate something with DC, it's a lot better if you've got several players at the table. Because right now, if you simply say, hey, we're going to choose DC just contingent on coming to some acceptable contract, you've pretty much gotten rid of all your negotiating. So I would suggest that you come back with at least 3 proposals, let the folks kind of know that there's competition, that you're not the only person that can take them to the dance, that they can take us. So I think this is really premature. I appreciate the work that's been done, but I think it's just premature to do this right now.
All right, I have Mr. Kraus without objection, then Mr. Hewitt, then Mr. Bishop-Henchman, then Mr. Smith, then Ms. Matson.
We actually didn't negotiate this in the sense that it was part of the 2022 proposal, and we got the rate way down, and this is literally the first time doing this that I've seen a rate of this level ever in the Northeast, and especially in DC. So typically the rates are way above this. Some of you have gone to events there, you know, but the normal rate is well above $200 a night for a group like this coming into that space, or even any group going into a DC space, you're in the high 180s to well above 200.
All right.
So this looked so good that we said, kind of, what's better for DC in the Northeast? Is this a better location for 2022, or is this a better location for 2024? And I think part of the decision is begging them on 2024 was that this looked like a prime location for that year. That it just made sense for a presidential year versus bringing this to you as part of a 2022 package.
All right, I have Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Bishop-Henchman, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Matson. Mr. Hewitt?
I would like to echo what Robert just said about cost and everything. This is a unique opportunity, I believe, looking at it, to not only be right there in the town that we want to take over. And about 2024, we should be starting to see some real.
If someone else says what I was going to.
But you know, but here's what I'm saying. We've got to start thinking positively too. And this is being there and having the chance to have C-SPAN, possibly MSNBC, and Fox News and everything else much easier if we're right under their nose right there. And I think that's a positive.
All right, Mr. Bishop-Henchman?
Pass.
All right. Mr. Smith? You're off? All right, I have Ms. Matson, Ms. Harlos, and then, did I see another hand or no? Okay, Ms. Matson, go ahead.
I feel kind of nervous about this. It is very expensive, just, you look down on Road 49, which contains the actual historical spending on food and beverage. This is requiring us to hit some of the highest numbers we've ever hit. That makes me nervous. This is also a union property, which means our AV costs are going to be increased quite a bit because union shadow is for labor that happens.
I thought they said they weren't locked in.
They said they would waive that. He said that.
Well,
There's other union stuff?
Yeah.
Lots of
So,
union costs.
the impacts
I
there
don't
on
recall
AV.
seeing any union shadows.
Okay.
The impacts on AV, which is one of our biggest cost elements. And I just don't think I'm ready for this yet. I know you guys haven't seen the draft contract is, not finalized. There's negotiation left to be done as the motion implies, but there's a long way to go on the contract in terms of, clauses that are I would say, I don't think they're equitable. So, one of the things I did this term was create kind of a checklist of things we need in contracts, and then go through each of the proposals and mark up, this is there, this is not there, and then add notes about things that shocked me in the contract. So I think the contract would need a lot of work on this one, so overall it just makes me, I think, too nervous to go there right now.
Okay. I have Ms. Harlos and then Ms. Adams without objection, and then Mr. Hagan.
Okay, quickly, for one, Ms. Matson's been on convention committee for so many times that even if I didn't have another comment, I would defer to what she had just said. But also, it's not going to be that long before there's the next LNC and the next convention committee. And we don't know what the vision of that LNC is going to be. And I'm always very reluctant to try to make decisions for another group of people when that really hasn't been what we were doing, and it's not that long. I like the deal, Mr. Hewitt. I just don't think it's our place.
All right, Ms. Adams without objection, and then Mr. Hagan.
A couple of things. I fully understand what Alicia's saying. I'm not in total disagreement with that. I also think what Robert said, what Jeff said, are incredibly valuable. To what Ms. Harless was saying, if we don't plan in advance, we're going to continue to be behind. And quite honestly, this committee came into a contract that someone else negotiated, and going into New Orleans, and we managed to live through it. And I have faith that the next committee will live through a contract as well. But I want to point out, the question today isn't, are we nailing ourselves in and tying ourselves into DC? It's, do we continue to put effort into making this contract better to bring back to you to approve at a later date, or do we start also looking at other places? That's all we're talking about. We're not saying today with a yes vote that DC is the place permanently. We're just saying DC gets our focus for this contract to try and bring you a better contract versus us splitting our focus between DC and somewhere else.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hagan?
Call the questions, we have enough time to consider 2022.
Oh, hope springs eternal. There is a motion to end debate on this motion. It's seconded. Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, we'll proceed to a vote. This will be a roll call vote, just to see whether or not we remember how to do them.
We haven't done one yet today.
Okay.
All right, so just as a reminder, a yes vote is to select Washington, D.C. and the Hilton as the site of the 2024 National Convention, assuming an acceptable contract can be negotiated. I anticipate that if we do have a yes vote, it is likely there will be a contract for our review and final approval, probably by the February meeting, depending on how long negotiations take. Ms. Van Horn, is this? Well, let me finish. Let me finish first. If we vote no, we will then leave 2024 open. It does not exclude DC from being considered, but it would be part of a broader competitive bid, and it would be a longer process. Ms. Van Horn, is this related to the motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, assuming, you said, assuming a good contract. So the yes would mean that the COC would then be working with that venue to get a decent contract, and we would trust their good judgment, because they have experience, that they would try to bring that back to us.
And then we would probably ratify it as a committee.
Attorney approval too.
Well, attorney approval is all, that's policy committee.
So this isn't the vote on the actual.
This is saying we want to be in DC in 2024 at that Hilton. And we're gonna try to do that. It's a good faith kind of deal. All right, any other questions about the vote? Hearing no other questions about the vote. Ms. Harlos, do you have a preferred order I go in?
Well, I was going to do the roll call like I've been.
Go ahead.
Ms. Bilyeu? Yes. Mr. Bishop Henchman?
Nay.
Mr. Goldstein?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan?
Yes.
I'm going to vote no. Mr. Hewitt?
Yes.
Dr. Lark?
Nay.
Mr. Longstreth?
Nay.
Ms. Mattson? Mr. Nikela?
Aye.
Mr. O'Donnell?
No.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Redpath?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Van Horn?
Yes.
Okay, the vote is 9 yeses, 6 noes. Would the chair like to vote?
I will not vote. Motion passes.
I counted 7 noes.
Let's double check.
Let me double check. I got a formula, but let's double check. So we have Mr. Bishop Henchman, myself, Dr. Lark, Mr. Longstreth, Ms. Mattson, and Mr. O'Donnell. That's 6.
All right. So by a,
Time, Mr. Chairman.
I figured it probably would be, but 9 to 6, the motion passes.
I move to extend for 15 minutes. Second.
I want you to understand what you're doing. We still have 15 minutes for nominations, and we still wanted to have 30 minutes for a budget. Anyone knows how to do math? You want 15 more minutes? All right. Is there objection to 15 more minutes? Hearing no objection, we will extend it for 15 more minutes. Also, congratulations. Sort of. Congratulations on having to deal with the actual negotiators. Mr. Redpath.
Well, I'm just going to comment here on the 2022 situation. First of all, I don't know if there's something that I think is important that should be negotiated into any midterm convention contract is the possibility, although I recognize that it's probably not a terribly great chance to happen. But it is possible the bylaws could be amended in 2020 convention to do away with midterm conventions. That's possible. It is possible.
Anything's possible.
And so I just think that any sort of contract with the 2022 locations should include a clause that allows us to get out of this scot-free. They would still have 2 years to move that space during that period. And I think it's important to leave that open, because then I personally don't think we should have midterm conventions.
Well,
I think that this may be off topic. I'm just saying that it is possible that that could occur. The other thing is, I will admit that I don't, for personal reasons, don't care for Memorial Day weekends for conventions, although this may be the best option for 2022. But I do think that if we are going to have conventions, national conventions every other year, we should not get into the habit of always having them on Memorial Day weekends. I think that is having maybe half of them on Memorial Day weekends or something like that might be okay, but I caution against that. But that said, I still might favor Reno over Indianapolis.
I have Mr. Goldstein, then Ms. Mattson, I think, and then Mr. Hagan. Mr. Goldstein.
Well, just my initial point, just to clarify for Mr. Redpath, the Indianapolis bid is 4th of July.
I know, yes.
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
Mr. Goldstein, do you want to be recognized for any other reason?
Yeah, I want to talk about Indianapolis in our bid.
Okay.
Do I have 15 minutes?
Well, if I catch people filibustering again, I have this little hammer and I whack it pretty hard.
God, bang on that side.
About the Indianapolis bid versus the Reno bid. Yeah, on the face of it, it appears that the Reno bid is a little bit less expensive, and I admit it's certainly better on the whole for the party. But it's exorbitantly expensive to get to Reno from many spots around the country. And would you rather have a convention in Reno with a great contract that 300 people show up for because people on the East Coast are not going to drive all the way to Reno? Or would you have a little bit more expensive convention in Indianapolis where we might have 800 or 900 people show up? Because look what happened when the convention was out in Portland. It was not a well-attended convention. And I think that the Reno situation might be somewhat analogous.
And you never know what kind of nut might be elected chair of such a
Right.
convention.
I wasn't there, so I don't know.
All right. I have Mr. Hagan. I have Mr. Hayes without objection as committee chair. I have Mr. O'Donnell. I have Mr. Hewitt. Did I have you? Did you rate?
You listed me earlier.
Did I?
Yeah.
So that's the one I forgot. Okay.
Right after Goldstein.
Yeah,
That's
I thought
okay.
I was
So,
after something.
yep. And what was happening was I was hearing in my ear, and that doesn't always help me be quite on top of things. So, I have
somewhat of a point of personal privilege.
personal privilege.
Slightly rhetorical, but we're not debating a motion right now, are we?
We are not.
We're about to.
We are not. It's about to.
I hear a motion needs to make.
We're about to be.
We need a motion.
I mean, frankly, I'm just going to ask.
Just call
Ms.
on me.
Ms. Mattson was before you, Mr. Hagan, but
I'm gonna make a motion.
That's what I was saying.
okay. So it sounds like whichever one I pick, I get the same result. Ms. Mattson.
So we can start the debate between the two. I will move to choose the
procedural thing
Nugget Casino Resort in Reno for the 2022 convention with the same condition, provided the convention committee negotiates an acceptable contract. But I don't think it doesn't need to come back through the LNC. So I think I can actually I'm gonna drop that from my motion. I'm just gonna move to choose the Nugget Casino in Reno for
I will second.
Yeah, if the contract's disapproved, it becomes impossible, and so then we come back to the committee.
Yeah, and the committee has the
do-
power already to negotiate.
Do you want to speak to it, or can we dispense with that?
No, we can't.
Okay, go ahead. I just asked.
So, if I were just choosing which location would I prefer for the convention, and don't look at the numbers, I think I prefer downtown Indy, but I just can't ignore the numbers of the Reno bid. Lower room rates than we're having next year, quite a bit lower. And by the way, that on line 28, the full day live recurring charges, that is calculated for the nights that it has 119, not the 99. So if the 99 nights would drop by $20. Make sure you notice that. But this is zero risk. There's no attrition, which can be a huge penalty. No food and beverage minimum. All our risk factors are zeroed out. And in terms of attendance, Portland was an anomaly, and we had a convention in Las Vegas, and I had good attendance there, so I don't think that was the issue. I just can't walk away from the numbers that they're giving us. Even the room space. Usually it's complementary with certain financial performances, but this is complementary with no contingencies on it. Plenty of space. I think in terms of protecting the financial risk of the party, that pushes me to Reno. I just have to do that. In terms of Indianapolis, again, we've got that on line 44, that high food and beverage minimum requirement, and compare that to the past years, that's pushing us to the high end of what we have to do. So you got kind of high risk there versus I just can't get to any other conclusion but Reno between these two.
All right, I have Mr. Hagan, Mr. Hayes, Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Hewitt, Ms. Adams, and then without objection, Mr. Starr.
Yeah, I was gonna make the same motion, and mostly because of the rates, especially the hotel room rate being basically average $30 cheaper. Yeah, wait for Mr. Goldstein to make a motion to amend.
Were you in the queue, Mr. Goldstein?
Increase the room rate?
No.
Sam, did I have you in the list or no? Okay, I thought so. All right, Mr. Hayes?
Yeah, I think one thing that you need to consider is how easy things are. Keep that in mind. The harder things are, the more burnt out volunteers that are not getting paid to put on these things, no matter who they are, it wears on them. So from what you've seen today from the two hotels, keep that in mind. That's a big thing. There's no risk. And one thing I do have a concern with relative to the Indy bid, the first I saw today of that space, that sliver, 10,000 square foot sliver on the side of the other hall for our meal space, that was somewhat concerning, and I don't recall ever seeing columns in a mock-up of the Griffin Hall, which is where we thought we were going to have our meals. So those are some things to keep in mind.
Mr. O'Donnell, then Mr. Hewitt, then Ms. Adams, then without objection, Mr. Starr.
I'll speak in favor of Ms. Masson's motion, and to address Mr. Goldstein's point about travel costs and people want to drive. Indianapolis can be just as difficult for people on the West Coast to drive to as Reno is for people in the Indianapolis area. So are we prioritizing people in one area over another with who can drive and who has to fly? The West Coast always, we've had our conventions on the East Coast consistently, and people on the West Coast haven't had that option. Furthermore, I believe myself and Mr. Sarwar live the farthest from Reno than anybody else. And I'm looking up flights right now from our area, and the round trip's under $300.
Mr. Hewitt?
I'm not going to speak well about Reno at all. I'm just going to speak about, have you guys ever seen the movie Children of the Corn?
Oh, yeah. Malachi.
Okay, Ms. Adams, without objection.
One thing that One thing that the LNC doesn't know is how horrible the contract procedure with Indy has been. I know because I sat on calls with Daniel and Ken until 3 o'clock in the morning correcting grammatical errors for the 3rd consecutive time. We had corrected them, sent them back, they sent them back to us, still full of errors.